the galaxy of luminaries discussing, debating, and deliberating a range of critical issues aligned with our summit theme, What's Next? Building a Future-Ready Learning Organization. This morning, we had the very exciting presentations by 9 participants, 9 teams, 5 of them organizational teams, 4 of them learning champions. These were the finalists vying for the Retail L&D Awards 2022 before our grand jury. And around 5:30 p.m. this evening, we shall be declaring the results and presenting the awards to these very, very deserving winners. I'd like to thank our partners and associates, our platinum partner, Reliance Retail Limited, our gold partner, Disperse, e-learning partner, Tesseract Learning Private Limited, event partner, B Sharp, gifting partner, Soulflower and Shopper Stop, business networking partner, REI Global Linker, charity partner, Train, that's Trust for Retailers and Retail Associates of India, magazine partner, Storai. We urge all our delegates to visit the networking area and network with your fellow delegates. Also to visit the expo area and meet our partners. We have a quiz that we've been running over the last yesterday and over today, where we'll be asking you questions based mostly on your experience with our partners. So by visiting the partner stalls, you can be quiz ready and you'll have a chance to win some great gift vouchers, e-gift vouchers that will come to your mailbox from Soulflower. Okay, 2 questions that we asked yesterday. We were to give you the answers today. Let me do that right away. Question code 6. How many transactions, approximately how many transactions per hour happen at Reliance Retail? The answer is 100,000. 100,000 transactions approximately per hour happen at Reliance Retail. The second question, question code 9. Who is the e-learning partner for Retail L&D Summit 2022? And the answer is Tesseract Learning Private Limited. Okay, so but we did not get any correct answers for both these, so no prizes being awarded for these 2 questions. So the prizes will be held over and we'll ask you extra questions today. Okay, so do visit the partner stalls, get quiz ready, stand a chance to win those Soulflower e-gift vouchers and have a wonderful day. We're all set for a riveting day 2 at the Retail L&D Summit 2022. And it's over to Dr. Lawrence Fernandez, Director, Retail Learning and Membership, Retailers Association of India, to set the tone for this wonderful day ahead. Dr. Lawrence?
Yeah, thank you, Hugo. It's wonderful to have all of you all today once again. We had powerful power pack sessions yesterday. Very good participation. We have also been getting feedback. Do give us your feedback on the link that will be provided to you. I think we have provided something yesterday also and today also. Your feedback will help us improve or get better content for you in future years. To begin with, we have today with us Himalakshmi Raju, the Chief Learning Officer from Reliance Industries. The first panel discussion of the day will be on humanizing digital learning. Again, we have Mr. R. Rajnarayan, ex Vice President and CHRO, Titan Company Limited, who will be moderating this session. Immediately post that, we will be having a special session on optimizing L&D learning and development investments for business growth, but by none other than R. Karthikeyan, Dr. R. Karthikeyan. And the second panel discussion of the day will be on embracing gig economy, its impact on learning and organization culture. We will have Seema Arora Nambiar, who will be moderating this panel. Again, we have got excellent CHROs and L&D heads as part of both these panel discussions. The last activity of the day will be the L&D Awards felicitation, and we will be announcing the winners, and we will conclude the session with the vote of thanks. So that's all from my side. Over to Hugo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence Fernandez, for setting the tone for this exciting day ahead. We begin the proceedings with a special address by a renowned learning and leadership development expert with a strong passion to create an impact on individuals and organizations. She holds multi-sector experience and has worked with large business conglomerates, including Reliance Industries, Tata Motors, and Cipla. She is a strong believer and proponent of modern work learning practices and works on technology and learning transformation. As a culture champion, she has led large-scale culture change initiatives, including articulating mission, values, and cultural priorities, and making it come alive through deep enrollment processes. Coaching and mentoring young HR professionals is her way of paying forward, which motivates her to blog regularly on topics pertaining to leadership and HR. She writes poetry in her free time, which she believes is not just a form of creative expression, but is also a medium for influencing change. Ladies and gentlemen, to deliver a special address, a warm welcome to Chief Learning Officer, Hydrocarbon Business, Reliance Industries Limited, Ms. Hema Lakshmi Raju. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. D'Souza, for the very warm welcome. When I look back, moments like this, moments when I get to spend time with a group of learning professionals are the moments that I really cherish the most. What a joy to be in your midst. I really wish it was in a face-to-face scenario, but let's make the best of the virtual opportunity that's available. So really complimenting for a summit like this, a very important thing that this forum is doing, so compliments in that. Humanizing digital learning, I know there is also a panel discussion on this very same topic immediately after this, but this is such an important, such a vibrant topic that we can even spend 2 full days on this, and that would still not be enough. So when I look back at the last 2 years, the challenge that has been posed, not just to learning, but to all of us has been huge. If I have to talk about learning in particular, the skilling challenge, the skill gaps are huge. The skilling challenge that we are facing is very, very big. While that's the challenge that I'm talking about, I also see 2 big shifts that have happened in the last 2 years. While these changes started even before that, like with everything else, it got accelerated manifold with the pandemic and with the change that happened after that. So one is skilling, learning is no more the last topic on anyone's list of agenda. Be it the business leaders' agenda, be it the HR leaders, be it employees, it's not the last item on the priority list. It has quickly moved up. Everyone is talking about it. Skilling is such an important thing that we need to be looking at. The second shift I also see is about the change in learner behavior. While push-based learning still happens in many, many quarters, what I also see is that thanks to many of the platforms which are available, learning in many, many ways is also pulled by very many segments of a population. So these are 2 very, very positive shifts. And if you're going to leverage on it, then the challenge will no more be a challenge for us. And a key lever towards converting this challenge into an opportunity is what lies right at the center here, which is digital. Digital is going to be a key enabler for us towards leveraging the challenge into an opportunity. And I would like to take a step back and talk about, even if we remove the word digital from this equation, even if we just keep learning, humanizing learning is very, very important. And I'm sure that many of you here would agree that even in the pre-pandemic scenario, did we always humanize learning? Maybe yes, maybe no. What do I mean by humanizing learning? It's about putting the learner at the center of all that we are doing. Be it deciding what is the agenda that we are going to run. As we are delivering the sessions, do we put the learner at the center? At multiple phases of the learning value chain, are we putting the learner at the center? And honestly, if I have to cross my heart and respond to that, yes, we did that very many times, but there were also times when we did not do that because we were too preoccupied with many other things. We were preoccupied with the content. We are preoccupied with the methodologies. We were preoccupied with the technology. So there were many other preoccupations that came in the way. And I don't think I would give myself a score 10 on 10 for humanizing learning. There was a gap which was existing. And in between has come this huge piece, digital, which has changed many, many things for us drastically. And if you're not going to humanize it, the pull that we are looking at, the skilling gap that we are talking about will continue to be the skill gap. A very interesting topic, a very powerful topic, and I really look forward to learning a lot from each one of you as well. And I didn't want to jump into it. In fact, I like the process of working on this presentation. It got me to do a lot of learning, a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting, a lot of interacting with other peers as well. I didn't want to jump into solutioning immediately, saying if we like to humanize digital learning, then this is the checklist of 1, 2, 3 items that we need to be looking at. So took a step back and came up with these 4 factors which are imperatives for humanizing. Starts with understanding the customer, which is the learner. Do we really know what a learner is like? How can we understand a learner's psyche, a learner's mindset, a learner's needs, requirements becomes very, very important. It's also about strengthening focus on multiple things, especially since here we're talking about digital. How do I strengthen my focus, my own understanding of digital? How do I strengthen focus around some of the basic elements of L&D? One of the pieces that I realized is that while we are talking about digital learning, some of the fundamentals still remain the same. The fundamentals of driving a learning organization, fundamentals of driving the learning function, I think they are going to be there forever. Be it the foundational piece of, do I have very, very strong, robust content? How am I designing it? What methodologies am I using? It will change. In a virtual scenario, what methodologies you're using are going to be different from what you use in a brick and mortar scenario. But yes, focusing on methodologies is important. So some of the fundamentals remain. It's about delivering an experience. It's not about delivering a program. It's not about delivering a session. It's not even about delivering a journey, but it's delivering an experience. How are we doing that? And as I spoke about a while back, it's about remembering fundamentals. Going back to the basics, strengthening it there is something which is very, very important. I would like to take a pause here and see if there are any questions, any comments, any thoughts. I'll go back to the Zoom screen for a moment and see if there are anything that you're wanting to share. Since I'm on the presentation screen, I'm not able to look at the Zoom screen. So if somebody can help me, if there are any questions on the chat window, that would be helpful.
Sure, ma'am, not right now. If there is any, I'll let you know.
Sure, thank you so much. I will move on. So starting with the first imperative of understanding the customer, the learner. Okay, I'm a little averse to using the word learner because I'm a strong proponent of the modern work learning practices by Jane Hart. So she says the moment you say a learner, there's a divide that comes in between. You're putting yourself on a higher pedestal. You're the one who is teaching, there's somebody who is learning. So while there's a lot of learner in the slide, but in the top line, I didn't want to use that. What are the different personas that we have? Because it's not just one kind of customer, one kind of learner that we are encountering. There are multiple different segments, and it's not just age-based, it's not just basic demographic-based. There can be multiple other personas that you look at. Are we understanding them persona-wise? For instance, about 2 years back, we were re-articulating the content strategy at Reliance. And one of the important changes that we brought in was that let's have a persona-based approach to our content. Because what, let's say, a very senior leader is wanting to learn as compared to, let's say, a millennial is wanting to learn could be different. So similarly, we carved out multiple personas within the Reliance ecosystem and said, can we look at them differently? Let's not have a one-size-fits-all approach. So the different personas, do we even know which are the personas that is existing in our ecosystem? And, and it's not just about the broad level personas that we talk about in a retail context. Your sales force at the retail outlets is a very big persona that you have. But even within that, there are multiple sub-personas that you can be looking at. Can we make an effort to understand that? What are our learner engagement practices? How frequently are we engaging with them? How frequently are we having conversations with them around what are they wanting to learn? And I would like to take a moment to look at this picture on the right, which is the Golden Circles by Simon Sinek. Starting with why. Why is someone wanting to learn? Can be very, very different. Somebody may want to learn to advance in their career. Somebody may want to learn to do better on their current job. Somebody may want to learn to sustain their job. Job is at risk. I'm wanting to ensure that I have a job in hand. Somebody may want to learn out of curiosity. So what is the purpose of learning? What is driving them to learn? Can we articulate? Can we understand the why? And that will happen if you're going to engage with them frequently. And personally, if I have to, do an introspection and give myself a score on learner engagement, I don't think it's too high. While my team does a great job of it, and I'm realizing this is an area that I should be looking at with the different, learner groups. How frequently do I engage? How well do I engage? Is something that we need to be looking at. And some of these live conversations can be very, very powerful. It can be throwing us stuff which we wouldn't have thought. For instance, this morning I was in a series of interviews with some of our high potential youngsters. So one of them was talking about, if you look at a manufacturing organization, now can we have a lot of just-in-time learning, point of need learning? Because today, as the person is doing the job in the manufacturing site, there are questions, queries that come up. And what they do is the very well-known traditional method of picking up the phone and talking to somebody and checking, which is good. That's peer learning. But can there be a technology aid which is made available, which can, which can be readily accessible by them? So your learner engagement can bring in multiple such touch points for you, wherein learning can be powerful across the learning value chain. Learner behavior, and when I talk about learner behavior, when you do learner personas, when you do learner engagement, all of that is going to throw up insights around what is the kind of behavior which the learner is displaying. And it is not just within the organization. We need to engage with our employees, understand, but also looking at the world outside. For instance, a couple of days back, I had one of the content providers outside. We have not subscribed to them, but this agency reached out saying, from your organization in the last so many months, so many people have access to courses. These are the kind of courses. So that was a wonderful insight. So even if it's a platform that we have access to, do we take a deeper dive to see what are people doing on that platform? What are they learning? What kind of courses are they learning? When are they learning? Okay, it's also an important, because at times you would find people learning a lot over the weekend. There could be times when there's a particular day of the week when they're learning. There's a particular time of the day when they could be investing in learning. A lot of these behaviors that you will be able to unravel if you're going to observe a little more. Okay, so it's not just data from inside, it's data from platforms outside, which can give powerful insights, all of this leading to learner insights. This is, in a way, a simplified design thinking process. If I'm not going to do it, if I don't even understand who my customer is, what is the human that I'm catering to, how will I be able to humanize my learning? Sounds very, very commonsensical, but as I said, there are very many times when we get caught in this busy trap and we may not spend time to do it because we have a lot of other things to do. So taking a step back and looking at these pieces is an extremely important, I would even say, strategic stuff that we will have to do if we are to humanize digital learning. Moving on to the next piece around strengthening focus, the visual on the right is just to, display the clutter that exists in front of us. There's lots and lots and lots which is available. Okay. The first piece here when I'm talking about strengthening focus is, do we understand technology? The abundance of technology which is available outside, from that, how is it that I can leverage something for learning? What is the learning potential that each one holds? If you look at some of the lists like the top 100 learning tools for the year, which the Modern Workplace Learning Organization publishes every year, you'd be a little surprised to look at the kind of tool they're talking about. It's not necessarily a LinkedIn Learning or a Skillsoft or Coursera. They're also on the list. But there are also many other technology tools that people are leveraging to learn. So do we know about it? As learning professionals, we need to be on top of it. Do we know about it? There's a lot of talk about metaverse. Okay, and my antenna went up, and some weeks back, when I realized there's a huge potential that metaverse holds, especially for learning, for providing immersive learning. What is metaverse? It's still not maybe there fully in the form that we would want. But are we anticipating? It's not just about understanding the current technology stack which is there, but what is the future technology going to do for us? Can we be the front runners in that? So understanding technology, not at a broad level, but at a deep level becomes extremely, extremely important. And when I say the current stack, especially within our organization, we have a lot of technology tools available. How are we looking at it? What is our approach towards it? Of all the tools that we have, what is it that we use for micro-learning? What is it that we use for point-of-need learning? What is it that we use for deep skilling? When do we use a VILT? When can we drive self-learning? So do we have a perspectives around all of these things clear becomes extremely important, because it can be a very, very good tool, but driven for the wrong purpose, that humanizing element is going to go missing. So not just understanding technology, but how does it serve my purpose? What is my approach towards it is an extremely important piece that we need to be looking at. To talk about an example here, we have been having LinkedIn Learning with Reliance for more than 3 years now. A very powerful learning platform utilized by a lot of our employees. And we introduced Coursera about 2 years back. So initially there was confusion. People were doing LinkedIn Learning, people were doing Coursera, and we had to quickly step in and bring in clarity saying, LinkedIn Learning is more for micro-skilling, point-of-need learning, wanting to learn quickly, use LinkedIn Learning. Coursera is for deep skilling, okay? So the moment we started speaking that language, slowly the larger organization also picked it up. So it took us time for us as well to get to that clarity. So do we have clarity around, we might have multiple tools, be it our quizzing tools, be it our survey tools, be it many other platforms that we have. But what for which purpose is something that we need to articulate very, very strongly. Can we also have a roadmap? Okay, we might have a number of things available with us at this point of time. Linking it back to what I was talking earlier about the learner needs, the learner personas, what is it that they are wanting, as well as a business context. What kind of learning tools should I have? What kind of technology should I have going ahead? What purpose will it serve? What are my business aspirations? Where is it going? Accordingly, what is the kind of learning that I should be delivering, and hence what kind of tools? For example, we have been having this annual learning event called Spectrum, which is a big hit. The focus here is to build a culture of learning. And 2020, like everyone else, we had a big challenge because it used to happen in a physical format. We used to travel from site to site doing this event. But when it had to happen virtually, it looked like a big challenge, but we partnered with the IT team, developed an in-house platform, happened very, very well. 2021 was a different kind of a challenge because we had done it all the previous year. How do we make it different? How do we elevate it a level higher? So we introduced 3D technology. We introduced elements of immersive learning. The platform, the feel on the platform was very, very different. It was a walkthrough experience that we gave. So the challenge given to us for this year is that will not do for 2022. 2021 is gone. Don't try to replicate the same experience. Can we have an avatar coming into people's, as people log into the Spectrum portal, can there be an avatar which is coming and taking them through that journey? So what is the kind of roadmap that we have? How do we want to, can we think future? What does it look like? What are we trying to do? Becomes very, very important. And the last, but the most important piece around outcomes. In doing all of this, I know in 2020, when we started, there was a mad rush. All of us were converting things to virtual very, very quickly. And the fact, and that was the right thing to do at that point of time, the fact that there was learning continuity ensured, which enabled business continuity, programs continue to happen, learning continue to happen, was an important piece there, but we have moved much beyond. So what are the outcomes that we are chasing at this point of time? Have our metrics gone through any difference as compared to pre-pandemic scenario? Are we still chasing the same metrics? What metrics have changed automatically? What needs a little more focus? For instance, one of the metrics that we used to chase was around what is the ratio between instructor-led training and self-learning. And with no effort post-pandemic, this metric has changed. Okay, because there's a lot more of self-learning happening. What we aspired happened with little effort. That can no longer be a metric because that's been achieved. We have reached the peak with respect to that. So what other metrics should we be looking at? What outcomes are we chasing overall as the learning organization, and what outcomes are we looking at specifically for different initiatives is something that we should be strengthening our focus on. Moving on, delivering experience, a lot has been spoken about this in the past few years, and experience is not just with respect to learning, it's overall employee experience. How can we make it as a very, very inspiring experience? And the first piece is around how can we make it seamless and intuitive? And I really liked it when a couple of weeks back, we were launching a people tech platform, and we had the senior leader addresses, and this person said, I don't want, the moment I see a how to use guide coming along with any gadget or any device, I say it is not intuitive. Whatever you design should be so intuitive that people with, with absolutely no kind of support can get in, know what to do it, and come out. Okay. So can we create, anything that we do with respect to digital learning, can it be as seamless and as intuitive? It is a piece that we need to be looking at. And there's a lot of stuff which has happened in the last few years with respect to learning experience platforms, but I see that we have still some more distance to cover. And the moment our learning platform can become like an Instagram or a Facebook, as intuitive, as attractive, I think creating that learning pool is not going to be difficult. I'm not undermining the importance of content. Content is the backbone, but it's also about, is the experience, can I reach anything in one click? Is something which is important. The most important piece around digitalizing is also about personalization. In fact, when I started working on this, the first piece that came to me was personalization. And then a lot of other, I realized one step back, many steps back, and many other things evolved. Okay. So we were talking about mass customization some years back. That itself was an achievement at that point of time. So when we had, digital learning platforms go live, which was more like a one size fits all, in those days, it became a solution to what was a challenge at that point of time. But today it is about just for me, just like at the point of need, I need something. Can I have something which is completely tailored to my requirement? What is the level of personalization that we are looking at? We have some really good recommendation engines which are there, which do some level of personalization, but it's a journey that, which has to still evolve. But to me here, I'm not even talking about, the technology evolution. That's definitely important, but I'm also talking about the evolution in our thinking. We cannot have the same set of things happening for everyone, even if it's the same program happening for the second batch. What is the kind of personalization that I can be looking at? And the moment the technology is able to give something which is just for me, that aversion towards, I need to be in the classroom to learn, I cannot learn as well using technology, is going to go away completely. So how can we personalize based upon multiple demographic factors? And the piece that we saw on the earlier slide with respect to why are they wanting to learn, what are they wanting to learn, the moment, as well as with respect to learner styles. Okay. Learning styles are very, very different. There's a visual style, there's an auditory style, there's a kinesthetic style. But even in the context of digital learning, it is easily possible to embed all of this into it. In fact, I was debating as to whether I should use a slide deck or not for this session. But then I realized that most of us tend to be visual learners. And if I'm just going to be talking you through this without the aid of slides, but even as I talk, I can paint pictures, I can address visual learners even as I'm talking as well, but nothing like having an anchor in front of you. So it is also personalization based upon learner styles. This is your learner style, and hence these kind of learning tools is something which is really going to help you a lot. Can we customize? It's the same content, but how it gets delivered digitally. It can be a podcast for some. It can be a micro, it can be a mobile nugget for some. It can be a do-it-yourself activity for some. So depending upon the learner styles, are we able to personalize the learning offerings as well becomes very, very important. And an important piece is that as it is, all of us, our employees are going through a lot of stress. there's a digital fatigue, that there's an overall fatigue. And even within that, there's a huge digital fatigue which employees are going through. And in that context, the moment you're going to push something, that's not going to happen. How can we create a pull? Okay. And if you ask me, have I found the solution for this? Not as yet. It's a journey. It's about creating a culture for learning. Multiple levers that we can leverage, but it's not going to happen automatically. So are we using their managers as levers? How good are our technology? Is it a one-click technology that we have? Is it personalized? Is it completely suited to their need? Do they have clarity on what to use when? I had this, senior leader talking to me very recently. We are launching a tech savviness, digital savvy initiative very soon. And it's completely built on curated content. So this person was like, it's possible to learn all of these topics on our own, but then we get confused. Okay, so the moment, but the content that you have put together is so very good. And that's a pull. So it's about, ensuring the right set of content is there. So multiple things that we will have to look at to ensure that there is a pull that we are creating. How do we celebrate learning? Okay, so an important piece that needs to come into our the learning ecosystem as such can be micro celebrations, can be small recognitions, but celebrating learning is very, very important. Maybe for completing a learning path, for implementing those changes at the workplace. What are those different celebratory moments that we can create for our learners is something that we will have to look at, because learning is going to stick. It's not just they're going to come back to learn, but what they learned, their inclination to implement is going to be huge. And the ripple effect that it's going to have, because when I see celebration happening, it's going to influence 10 others, 20 others, 100 others to go do that. And especially in today's context, when all of us are under stress, any reason to celebrate is good. So bringing in celebration to the context of learning becomes very, very important. Moving on to the last, but a very important aspect is about remembering fundamentals. Focus on content and the context. I like this phrase that somebody made. They say content is king, but context is kingdom. So, both are very, very important. How do we focus on? You can create a very good experience platform. It's a seamless, intuitive experience. It's personalized. All of that is done. But at the end of the day, the quality of content that we're giving is not up to the mark. Then that's not going to serve the purpose at all. And can you contextualize it? And that's where I would say it's not just reliance on the off-the-shelf content that's available for us outside. How can we also strengthen our contextualized content catalog becomes very, very important. It's also about, our design skills, be it instructional designing, experiential designing, experience designing. It can be a 30-minute session that I'm delivering virtually, but does it adhere to the design fundamentals? Am I designing it as an experience? Am I taking care of different learning styles? Does it have the basics of other design principles which are there? So enhancing design skills becomes very, very important, a very foundational skill that I would say is required by learning professionals. The 70-20-10, if you're talking about the first piece is that we have excessively focused on the 10, the 70-20, while it has been there for more than 30 years. The structured focus that needs to come on that, it happens on its own, that's a different thing. Structured focus that needs to become on that is really not there. And even where it happens, what is the digital support that we are giving to it in today's context becomes very, very important. For instance, we are building a learning experience platform internally in Reliance, which will cater to everything. It can be a coaching experience that you're driving, mentoring experience. It can be an action learning project. It can be a job shadowing experience. All of that can be managed, driven by the LXPs, how we are designing it. And it's not just about making it digital, but what is the personal touch we are getting there? How are we? Is it customized to that particular individual? What is the kind of? I remember one of these leadership interventions that I was driving in one of my earlier organizations. It was for the topmost 7 or 8 leaders that we were doing. And there was a digital buddy that they had. And it was not actually an intrusion. They liked it very much because every day morning it would give them reminders about you're supposed to do with respect to that journey that they were going through. You're required to do 1, 2, 3 things. You have something to complete by tomorrow. So the kind of nudges which it was giving ensured that they could stay focused on it despite the very busy life that they were leading. So especially when you're talking about the 70-20, how can digital become a buddy and an enabler is something that we will have to look at. Learning to learn, an extremely important piece, a foundational skill, not just for learning professionals, but for all. There's a very good course on learning to learn in Coursera. You may want to explore that, which talks about the brain science as well and comes into learning to learn. If you're talking about, bringing in the human element, making self-learning come really alive, then there are very many times when people struggle, because they don't know about their learning styles. They don't know about what kinds of learning is available. How can what can I leverage for what? Which is the platform for this? Which is the platform for that? So learning to learn, building that as a capability, which is even more foundational to learning agility, I would say, becomes important. So some of these fundamentals when we are focusing on will also ensure that the learning that we are driving meets its objective, is able to excite our learners, and the desired objectives are achieved. I would like to conclude with one last piece around, so what does it mean for the modern learning professional? Because at the end of the day, if we are the ones driving it, the humanizing digital learning is something that we are expected to do. So what are some of the shifts that we have to make? And not everything is a shift, something is a plus. So starting with, it's no more about digital savviness. We kept talking about digital savviness for long. Today it is about digital depth. Do I really understand technologies, the power of the technologies, that analytics, that data has to drive learning for my organization? For instance, we run a particular leadership development program. And one of the problem statements that came up was that it was twofold. One, we found that a certain percentage of participants were dropping out midway for whatever reason. Second, even those who were completing, were they graduating? Okay, were they picking up capabilities to the required levels? Both of these were problem statements. So how do we solve it? Well, there are multiple other things that we're doing. We're also seeking the support of the analytics team to look at, is there something that needs to be done differently with respect to participant identification itself? What are the other insights that data can throw for us, analytics can throw for us, is something that we're looking at. So the power that data has is huge, but we must first understand it to be able to seek that support. Do I know what analytics can do, what big data can do, what technology can do, what AR, VR can do? Without understanding it, we are not going to be able to leverage it at all. Learning used to be looked at as an art. It's a very creative piece. It's about creating something out of nothing. You create that very beautiful session and experience and deliver it. Yes, it continues to be all of that. Learning will be an art, but it is also a science. Do we understand, the different learning styles? Do we understand the brain science? So this is one of the pieces that ATD, Association for Talent Development, keeps talking about. So do I understand the science element of learning? Becomes important. It's no more just about content creation, it's also about content curation. And for some time, I used to think both are the same, but they're not. Okay, for instance, the example that I was talking about, the technology program that we are running, content is available outside. I just need to know which one to pick up, and there's abundance available. How do I pick the right content? What are my guiding principles going to be there? For this particular one, we said it has to be reasoned, it has to be relevant, and it has to be simple, easy to understand. Okay, so with that parameter, we have pulled in content from different sources and put together and created a journey out of it. So it's not something that everyone can do. So it is not just content creation, it's content curation. It's not just instructional designing, but experience designing. I've spoken about it. To curate an experience, for instance, instructional designing just talks about what happens inside the session. I remember this, one of my earlier managers who will be my lifelong mentor talking about, this is about the brick and mortar days. With respect to experience design, he would say, it's important how you engage with the learner right from the moment he or she gets into the session. You have your early birds who come in half an hour before the session. What is the experience that you're giving? Are they left to themselves to keep staring at the ceiling or staring at their mobiles? Or is there something that you're doing to engage with them from that moment on? What are we doing in the virtual scenario? For instance, even when we have a session, a webinar or a VILT, we will have people coming in 5 minutes before, there are people walking in 5 minutes late. So that 10 minutes, how do you manage? Is there a blank screen that they're seeing, or is there something else that can be done? And this person would also go to the extent of saying, can you tap all their senses? What they see, what they smell, what they hear, can it all spell learning? So that's experience design. It's not just learning in a context. Some of our, I definitely know in the manufacturing sector, we have a set of people who say, I can learn only in front of a facilitator in a classroom. Probably the same is the case with retail as well. How do we bring in that mindset shift saying, learning can happen in a context, but learning also needs to happen in the flow as they are working. The example that I gave a little while back, saying, as a person is working, why should he or she call up somebody to check, can there be a technology aid? And in fact, we did a small pilot on this some years back using an AR tool for on-the-job for point-of-need learning. And our retail organization was very quick to pick it up, and they've done some fabulous work with respect to AR-enabled point-of-need learning, especially for service engineers, which really helps them at the point as they are servicing. If I have a doubt, how do I, what do I do about it? So that's kudos to a retail team who have implemented this technology very, very beautifully. And the last one is not just skill building, but it is capability development, and it's both. Okay, we have been looking on building multiple skills, be it digital skills, soft skills, the other functional technical skills that we talk about. But can we look at capabilities, which simply put is an aggregation of different skills that come together? And it's not just capabilities for individuals, but it's also capability building for the organization. And that's an important shift that we will have to make because the ask from organizations, ask of the organization from the learning function is huge, because the upskilling need is very, very high, reskilling need is very, very high. And what they're expecting from us is huge, and we will be able to meet up to that demand if we develop as capability development professionals. It requires a certain mindset shift. Many things that we're looking at today, for instance, a culture of learning is a capability building. Digital mindset is a capability. There are multiple capabilities which will make organizations successful today. And we need to focus on both. It's not either or. We need to focus on skills, which is relatively more short term, and also capabilities which are longer term, like this example of during one of such sessions, I heard one of my co-panelists talk about skills are more like leaves on the tree. There's a tree model of capability development. Skills are more like the leaves on the tree, which will, the tree will shed it after some time, new leaves will come up. But capabilities are like the roots, much more long-lasting, long-standing. So we need to focus on both. Okay. So some foundational pieces, which is learning, agility, networking, business acumen, I think that will keep us in good stead. We can't ignore that at all. We keep talking about learning agility for the rest of the organization. What about our own learning agility? Becomes very, very important. So with that, I would like to, stop my monologue here. I'm very, very keen to have some inputs from you. Really looking forward to it.
Hi, ma'am. Thanks for the interesting presentation. We have a quick question here. Okay, just a second. The question says that, ma'am, a lot of people are upgrading themselves using Coursera, etc. Do they really add value? How do organizations look at such courses? And does organization incorporate these or encourage employees to learn on their own?
Okay. So personal learning is a big piece. People will continue to do that. They have their personal aspirations and all of that. So that will continue to happen. Same time, organizations will also have to look at deep skilling as an agenda. And many of these digital platforms, be it Coursera, be it LinkedIn, can be leveraged. So we have org recommended learnings which can be done utilizing these platforms. We have individuals who will also go and do it. There are many times when the two can meet. Okay, I'm looking at people with certain skill sets, and here are my set of people who have done a course in Coursera or one of that, they display that skill at a considerably higher level of proficiency, then why not? Okay, so personal learning will continue to be, will continue to happen, but it's also about organizations leveraging it to run the organizational learning agenda as well.
Thank you, ma'am. There's another question for you, which says, with the context changing at a rapid pace, how or what does one ensure relevant content?
Stay in touch with the environment. You know, I don't think need identification on an annual basis is relevant anymore. You will have to, you know, keep identifying needs on the flow. And as I said, it's not just about reaching out internal stakeholders to identify, it's also about looking outside, what is happening in the world outside, so that I'm able to bring in that outside in perspective and ensure I update my content catalog, I update my program calendar. It's not about annual calendars any longer. To give a simple example, we were running a session for some of our high potential talent, and we had a senior IT leader come and talk to them about digital mindset. And the questions which were coming to the speaker gave us a lot of insights around what are their learning needs. And we quickly curated, and within 25 days, we curated a learning journey for them on digital savviness and made it available. So you should have your, you know, eyes and ears open at multiple places for you to pick up what are the needs and also act on it very quickly. Because like olden days, if you're going to take 6 months to curate a learning journey, by then the need is already gone. Any other questions?
No, ma'am. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Hema Lakshmi Raju. Thank you so much for that wonderful and insightful presentation. Ma'am, there will be in your inbox, your mailbox, you'll find a small token of appreciation and gratitude, voucher from Shoppers Stop. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation that takes us beautifully into our first panel discussion, which will also put the spotlight on humanizing digital learning. Please help me in welcoming our distinguished panel. He is Chief Talent Officer, Reliance Retail Limited. A warm welcome to Jiva Balakrishnan. She is Chief People Officer, Sapphire Foods India Limited. Please welcome Sandhya Deep Puri. She is Global Head, Learning, Leadership and Organization Development at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. A warm welcome to Swati Sarangi. Please welcome the General Manager, Learning and Development, Bata India Limited, Karanjit Uppal. She is the Chief Human Resources Officer, Wellness Forever Medicine Medicare Limited. A warm welcome to Nishigandha Kulkarni. He is Head of Retail Training at Titan Company Limited. A warm welcome to Narayanan Sabharatnam. And ladies and gentlemen, moderating the session is the former Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer, Titan Company Limited, R. Raj Narayan. A warm welcome to our entire panel, and it's over to you, Mr. Raj Narayan, and the panel to take us through this panel discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Good. I think that's a question that is most often asked these days, isn't it? Right. Ladies and gentlemen, a very, very warm good afternoon. I hope all of you are feeling bright and bushy-tailed, because we're going to have a very rousing discussion now. When I got this topic, I was reminded of a dinner of a few HR heads had about a month and a half ago, when times were a little better and numbers of new COVID cases were far, far lesser. Yeah. And one of the topics that was discussed at that dinner was the annual, some companies have an annual target of training mandates, okay? And over the last 2 years, the annual target for training mandates was met maybe 2 or 3 times in 3 months, right? With virtual training happening, yeah. The other topic that was discussed, interestingly, was the other end of the spectrum, that with almost all of training in the last 24 months, turning virtual. The problem was learners or trainees have become more and more anonymous. A lot of learning happens with cameras switched off, conversations happen with cameras switched off. The element of depersonalization or dehumanization, if I can use that word, slowly started worrying people, and also worrying about the effectiveness of learning that is happening, right? Today, to discuss this and to arrive at some of the things that are being done to humanize training, if I can use that word, we come to know from our eminent panel. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask each of the panelists in alphabetical order of their first name to perhaps tell us first about what they feel about the topic, one. Two, what are the things that they're doing in their organization, specifically, in this area of, handling virtual training, and is this issue of humanizing it relevant, not relevant? What are some of the things they're doing in their organizations? I'll follow that up after we've done with all the panelists. I'll follow that up with a few questions that I have to delve a little deeper into some of the topics. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the first panelist to give us his views. Jiva, over to you. Can I ask you to throw some light on this topic, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Raj. Am I loud and clear?
Yes.
That's a check. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Raj. It's a wonderful topic. And in fact, we had an offline conversation. So why such topic? Why humanizing learning? So my job is also become very simple today because earlier my colleague, the chief guest of today, Emma, spoke about the whole principle and how we are operating as clients, as a group. And then you'd also heard from many of my colleagues today morning during their award presentation what they are doing in their diverse business. So as you all know, we are very diverse business. And one guy was talking about how he was able to make a difference in the service engineers' life, how they were able to do it in a pandemic situation, but still were able to contribute to the business and then reduce the customer complaints and then increase the customer satisfaction. At the same time, service the customers. And somebody else, a colleague from fashion lifestyle business, was talking about an initiative which really helped the business to increase their outcome. And I'm talking about outcome-based measurement. It's all about the top line and bottom line. So they were contributing. One of my other colleagues was talking about a talent marketplace. That's a roadmap towards a talent marketplace. It's all about building a capability building so that we build a largest talent marketplace. So the advantage is we don't need to depend on any competitors for hiring. We can produce our own people. And at the same time, there is a talent liberation process, a talent mobility advantage within the organizations. So these are some of the things they spoke in the morning. And then him also connected with personalization. So it's all about personalization. So how we were able to manage learning the last 2 years. One is digitization. And second is we don't want to lose the personalized approach, the humanizing approach. So what do we mean by human approach? It's all about being empathetic, being relevant, making it relevant to our learners, or rather, our employees. That's the most important thing. So how we can leverage technology and still maintain that human element. So there are a lot of initiatives. Maybe I can pick up a few initiatives, what we are talking about. So we also, interestingly, we launched some new businesses. For the first time ever, when we started home delivery during lockdown. So we had to train people, which they have never done it in the past, but we used this lockdown time to train them and then deliver customers. So we use technology, we used VR, AR based solutions. So there is a human element, at the same time, there is a technology. So we used virtual reality without any need for any additional equipment. People can feel the store, they can walk through the store, they can interact with the customers, still they can learn. And that's something which we tried, and it was really, really successful, and people are able to understand. The second thing is normal VALT. Anyway, the VALT happens virtually instructor-led training program. It happens everywhere. But how we can make it different was like, no, we use a lot of tools like Mentimeter or Padlet to engage people or breakout rooms. So that there is conversation. There are conversations and still we are able to engage them. The third one is a simple talking PPT. People are really, and 95% of our employees are in the field, and mostly, and our grocery business is still running, and then there are certain businesses which are not running during lockdown. But still, these people were able to connect with, I mean, they always have a connect with the trainers, local trainers, but the local trainer can't travel everywhere. So we created something called talking PPT. So PPT, there is in a corner that the trainer is still there. So the employees can connect with that person and then still able to learn. There is in PPT also this is there, and then there is another tool called Boom. That's also possible. And then one is, I mean, using all the tools. And as Hema rightly talked about, we are in retail and diverse business. So employee experience is actually the foundation for customer experience. Unless the employees are having good experience, they'll not be able to deliver. So in terms of, I don't think we are going to, I think we are going to discuss on well-being as well. So once their well-being is taken care and the employees are well taken care, at the same time, they're also supported with right capabilities to do their job, and they'll be able to do it. There are two things. One is employee-centric learning, and then second one is business requirement. So when I'm talking about employee-centric, the whole learning need analysis changed. We flipped it to employees' needs. How we are going to make it relevant for our employees. So, so the employees, when I'm joining an organization, what is important for me is role readiness certification. Are the skills and capabilities required to do my job in an effective way? And that's where we focus a lot on making it role readiness, so that learning is not a consumption. It is actually a creation. More than curation, it is also a creation. So they are part of the learning process, and then that's the first stage. And then the second stage is a continuous stage, a continuous learning or precision learning. Whatever is required, it is available everywhere. It's like democratizing learning. So learning is available everywhere. Content is available everywhere. We need to really create an excitement for me to, or for the learners to really pick up and then take it. The third one is, as we are growing, I think we are, as we are proudly saying that we are India's largest marketplace. There are a lot of opportunities for them to grow within the organization, which is not there, which is limited in other organizations. So there are a lot of businesses and diverse businesses and a lot of opportunities. So they can grow, they get certified, they build their capability in more than their domain, more than their, it's called career lattice or career mosaic. So they can, get developed and they get certification, then move on. There are a lot of opportunities for them internally to grow. This is where we are creating a need for learning, and there is a personalized approach as well. Yeah, so that's my, I don't think I've taken much time. So over to you, Raj. Raj, you're on mute.
That's another, I think, most used comment, huh? You're on mute and can I be heard and all the rest of it. Anyway.
Yeah, this is something which I learned in the last 2 years.
Thanks, Jiva. Thank you very much for that perspective. And I think the point that you raise is very important, that in a sense, the shift to virtual learning is timely because of all the digitization that's happening around, not just in learning, but in every sphere of our lives. And it's our responsibility, I guess, as learning professionals to try and make it as exciting as possible, and keep the people element, the human touch going completely through and through. Thank you so much for that. Karanjit, can I request you to throw some light on this topic and what you feel about it?
Thank you so much. I was patiently listening, and it just took me back a couple of months ago. And I would just like to say one thing in terms of humanizing the learning through technology. I think the way you just did it, of paraphrasing, even within 15 to 20 seconds, that builds in a lot of retention and traction. And talking about the company where I'm currently in, with different verticals, which is frontline, showcasing the products to our customers. If I look at manufacturing, wherein we've got the best of the best engineers and the teams, they come with different backgrounds, access to different level and amount of technologies, and at the same time servicing the B2B sector. So I believe without humanizing the learning space, it wouldn't be possible at all. And I'm very passionate about this. So we do different things for different sets of audiences. And in fact, we learned a lot from our audiences when we were, talking, whether it's through a WhatsApp video call or if it's through Zoom or MS Teams. First thing, what we figured out was that the comfort level of the audience is most important, because their earlier comfort level pre-pandemic was face-to-face. And it was a shift for everyone. So in today's date, technology works a lot. You have the like, the heart symbols, and the handshake symbol and everything. That works for the younger generation, for the millennials. But for the relatively elder lot generation, which is not used to these kind of so-called buttons and who are not that tech savvy, they too require learning. And that requires a different construct. And for that, again, it's been a journey. So for example, if you look at one or two sets of, industries like, let's say manufacturing, they know their jobs very well. They know how to do their jobs very well. And the requirements are very, very specific. And they're absolutely clear in what they want. All they just need is that confidence that, yes, even in today's age and today's world, irrespective of how technology has progressed, that, we choose to trust them. And they require relatively more hand-holding as compared to, let's say, millennials. So it's a support system, and technology has worked to that advantage. And it's a matter of building faith, when we talk about humanizing. So the basics were already there. It's just that how do we attune ourselves when we move into a learning setup? So when we speak with the business leads and the business heads, their primary concern is not about how many different programs or what kind of ROI in terms of rupees or training effectiveness. One of their primary concerns is that, how do you get across a varied audience across the board? And how quickly can you do it? So I believe technology is one aspect. And another important aspect of what I was also observing in the prior conversation of very simple techniques like paraphrasing, building trust. Personally speaking, 2 years ago, if somebody would ask me to come in front of a video camera and even shoot a short snippet, I would be very shy about it. I would get very conscious, irrespective of the number of years of work experience I have. Now, all of a sudden, the whole world is saying, sit in front of a camera, talk for 2-3 hours, or 4 hours, or 8 hours. And this would make anybody uncomfortable, not only me. So how to slowly build that thing up? A lot of people have various genuine reasons. So opening that comfort level. In the corporate side, honestly, people didn't have a choice but to move on to video calls. But in the non-corporate side, the way things work, how different industries operate, how do we make people comfortable with choices? That is very important in a learning sphere. So we can still choose to have this conversation without our videos, but that loses the thrill. But when the videos go on and how uncomfortable people are, we get to see that through the body language. And it is this very reason why humanizing is very important. How do you make a video interaction more soft, not hard? It's not a numbers conversation. It's a people conversation. So we do very simple things which connects with the audience there and then and there and now. It's easier to ramble out what's coming in our minds, but the choice is always there to listen. And one of the advantages of the video is that, you can get to see whether even the other person is, responding or is even listening to you or not. And that's what letting people know the power of video. And it is just, in today's date and age, just secondary to a face-to-face conversation. And how we've pitched it is that, thank goodness, the coronas and the omicrons don't get transmitted through videos. So that brings in a level of an element of humor in the conversations. So yes, so building comfort, establishing trust. So the basics remain the same. We use different tools, what my previous colleague talked about, totally dependent on how comfortable the other individual is. I mean, that's what we all do. Whether it's through a phone, through an iPad, through a laptop, desktop, at the end of the day, the message should go across in the right manner. So yes, humanizing is the foundation. And we do different things for different sets of people. And technology to support, it is not the only reason why we choose to do that. I think that's what I would like to submit over here.
Raj, you are on mute.
I thought I unmuted myself. Obviously, I didn't. Right. Thank you, Karanjit. I think it's interesting what you say, that the basics remain the same, right? And people touch is essential to what we do. And it's just that it has to be done in a way which is personal, which is relevant to that specific individual. Yes, I think a lot of people insist on videos being on during training sessions, but there are some hard nuts who say, hey, no, I will not put my video on. So I guess there's also that tussle which happens. But I guess all that is part of the finding new ground. Nishiganda, if I can request you, I think you work in a very different industry to what Jiva and Karanjit are in. And I guess things have moved very, very much in your industry as well and in your organization. It would be lovely to hear from you, your perspective on this particular topic.
Thanks, Raj. Yes, the way you mentioned, it's a completely different industry. And we being, the pharma retail, during the entire COVID and the lockdown period, we were operational, and our proposition is 24/7, right? So all employees were working 24/7. It was a very difficult time, actually, that, from the transportation till everything was a challenge for them, but still we wanted to motivate everybody to come and work. At the same time, what we did was, we actually thought that this is a great opportunity for the capability building, and we need to invest a lot into capability building. So immediately we actually moved on to an online platform. We actually have a very beautiful LMS platform, which has the video facility and all. However, till then, I guess people were hesitant to use the video and online facility, right? People were more comfortable in the face-to-face kind of a training environment. So we moved into the online training programs for our team. At the same time, motivating the team was very, very crucial during this time, because they knew that, the HO people are sitting at home. However, I'm working in the store 24/7 and exposing myself to the patients, right? Because the people who would visit the store, they would be like impacted with some kind of infection, maybe. So that's where we actually put more focus onto the, the tagline for the entire training intervention was locked hai par down nahi hai. So that's the way, we were trying to build that motivation. We did a lot of training interventions, like 3 hours modules for our store team, wherein store and as well as our warehouse team, because 400 people were working in the warehouse day and night to ensure the medicines and, everything is being passed on to the stores at the appropriate time. We did a lot of online programs for them on their well-being. mental well-being. There were programs on the counseling. We had actually in panel the counselors who will actually have to connect with them for the mental well-being, how they can take care of their health, and the desk yoga and all, because they need to be physically fit as well. So, and on the sales, in fact, that was a time the salons were closed, right? And people were focused more into the taking self-care. So we actually trained our staff on the personal care products, how to use those personal care products, how you can guide the customers on using the personal care products, though they are not visiting the salons. And the entire focus was, on their skill development, which will help them in actually motivating themselves as well as building the customer connect. We launched a beautiful program called as Lavanya for all our female, staff who is working in the stores. And that was completely on the personal grooming as well as how can you guide customer on buying the personal care products. The best thing, the entire team was motivated because we wanted to build our own training center. And that happened during the COVID time, wherein people were cutting down on the training budgets. We invested in training and we built our beautiful training campus during that time. And once the lockdown was lifted, people were like eager to visit and see that training premises, because during this period we started the video based content. So our trainers, we trained the trainer on how to create your own videos, and trainers started creating their snippets and we started publishing it on our platform. At the same time, what we did for the participants, that whatever you are learning, you create your videos and upload it on our learning platform. And then we actually ran the contest and we selected the videos and we published it as a training content, and those people got rewarded. So that kind of intervention built a lot of engagement and motivation for the team to actually continue the learning during this entire difficult time as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Nishikanta. I think
Raj, again, you are on mute.
Thank you, Nishikanta. I think the point that you I like that point about locked hai bagar down nahi hai, and I think that's a wonderful way to, I guess, also give that message across and motivate people. And I guess, yes, and I think this whole thing on personal grooming and various other points, wonderful points. Thank you so much for that. I'd like to move over to Ratnam, Sabaratnam from Titan. Ratnam, I know that Titan had launched the virtual LMS maybe a decade ago, but over the last 2 years, there's a lot of work that's happened, especially with Titan U having been launched virtually, coincidentally from April of 20, and the multiple number of training that is delivered for both retail and non-retail. Be great to hear from you what has been done at Titan as one of the largest retailers in the country to humanize learning.
Thank you, Raj. I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes.
Okay. Completely in sync with what Jiva spoke about and what Karanjit was alluding. And certainly agree to what Nishikanta was talking on the well-being and people at the stores working hard, whereas the expectation from them, from people in the corporate office, is also to put in the same kind of effort. I think we started with that as a premise, and we have seen a huge surge in the use of technology. Most of the sessions have been virtual, and the change also has made us think on how to make them as effective as an instructor-led training, if not better. And we have learned newer ways of engaging with our participants. Also learned that not everyone was comfortable using the remote platforms. Apart from the connectivity issues, we focused on teaching people how to mute and unmute themselves. That was the first thing that we started focusing on. We also quickly figured out that if we have to have meaningful programs online, then we need to have smaller groups. It was important to focus on individuals, and that's where the humanizing actually happens. We also looked at probably a pre-work for participants, because that was one way of getting them to relate to the subject, and also encourage peer learning, because a lot of good learning happens when somebody who is in the same level, is able to tell you something, and that becomes quickly relatable from a participant's point of view. We also looked into the likes of Menti, Kahoot, Loom that Jiva was talking about, and that enhances the engagement and creates word clouds, which could also be seen, happening on the screen as far as participants are concerned. A lot of focus on developing compelling content for learners to get into self-learning. And like what you mentioned, Titan U was something where we were curating content through subject matter experts throughout the organization. We created that. More than 150 people have been identified who are constantly contributing to that content. And also, duration wise, you cut down on the programs that you run, so 8 hours doesn't work anymore. You can't sit for more than 2 hours in a place. You definitely have to have a 15-20 minute break, if you're doing a 3-hour session. So it's mandatory to look at all these requirements. Though from a facilitator's point of view, it becomes like a continuous thing. But from a participant's point of view, it's important to measure the fatigue that is happening when they are hearing you remotely. We have certainly looked at launching Coursera, LinkedIn, and these are, enablers for the people who are self-motivated. But now we are also seeing that since these are enablements which have happened in the organization, leaders are persuading their people to take up something, which is relevant for them. That also is, helping us build the effectiveness for all the spends that we are making. There is a risk, of losing personal touch, and probably that is one of the reasons why we really need to have a better infrastructure. So better content, newer ways to engage the learner, and methods to grow, personal and learner accountability. We have been asking franchisees to invest on a good broadband. We have also, involved them to set the context sometimes, so that there is a better buy-in from the participants. Even people from the business who are keen to run program, need to participate and grow their perspective around the need for running it. Like what I said earlier, having a smaller group helps when it comes to attention and participation from all the learners. New icebreakers have been thought of. We did a brainstorming session with all the trainers just to build a set of icebreakers that we could run with all the participants. We came up with almost 80 odd icebreakers, Raj, and that was quite interesting. It was never done before. Similarly, getting them to tell stories. So storytelling has become an important part of engagement. Taking up case studies and discussing them has become extremely important. So there is a one-on-one personalization that happens when you are listening to someone who is talking from the other side. And it's important that no matter what time you give, you get to hear everybody who is in the training space. So when it comes to participant engagement, we have also looked at building in quizzes, keeping the team alert. And the trainer also knows that people are listening behind the screen, right? So we have experienced better results when we have had the main stakeholder in the program who was key to getting the program going. And that really brings the skin in the game. So that's how we have personalized, Raj.
Thank you, Ratnam. Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me this time. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I think what I hear you saying is shorter programs, 2-hour, 3-hour programs on the one hand, much greater leader involvement, fun coming in through better, more creative icebreakers, so creativity of trainers is improved. Investment in technology, both from as simple as the line itself to usage of different kinds of technology to bring in. So various things that are happening. Very interesting to hear what you'd say. Thank you very much for that. Can I request Sandeep to give us her perspective in how it's working in your organization, Sandeep?
Sure. Thank you, Raj. I think we all are resonating quite similar thoughts. And, as an individual leading organization and leading the HR for organizations, my biggest challenge has always not just been around humanizing learning, but also humanizing organizations. I think that has been something that has kept me going for a very long time now, and more so during the pandemic. It has, the dehumanization of entire organization has reached very, very different levels altogether. So I think we can all, I see most of us are learning professionals here. We can relax a bit. It's not just humanizing learning, but humanizing organizations, every element of it. I think that's something that occupies minds of good leaders. And with that, I think learning is I've been a hardcore learning professional for a very long time before I went into general management. And for me, the best example, the best epitome of learning is when it originates from a need. If there is a need that is felt, that needs to be implemented in an organization, whether it's learning, whether it's development, the humanization finds its way into it. More often than not, I've realized, and that has been my learning over the years, dehumanization happens when there is no need and we want to do things because we want to feel good about it. So that has been a conscious effort over a period of time that I have focused on, that my learning intervention should come from hardcore organizational needs. And when there is a need, there is an event of monitoring, not just by HR, but business also monitors it, because it's a business need. Finally, they want results out of it, and therefore they're monitoring it. When they are monitoring it, you make it more meaningful. When you're making it meaningful, there is no way that people will feel that, oh, it's only digital, or oh, it's only good for fun to have. So finally, it finds a nice blend, and you're able to marry the tech, you're able to marry the human part of it, you're able to marry, and more so in an organization like mine. We run over 400 to 50 stores of Pizza Hut and KFC in the country, and we've got people over across the country, and therefore tying them together under one umbrella, I need to digitize it. But I ensure that when I'm digitizing it, the meaning of that learning event is not lost. And when the meaning is not lost, and by meaning I mean that the objective of that event is not lost. It's a business objective, there is a derivative out of it, and there are leaders who are monitoring. So I think that takes away a lot of just, why is my video off, or why is my video on, or do I enjoy it, I don't enjoy it. Finally, if there is an outcome expected out of it and everyone has to live up to that outcome, people tend to get involved. When there is involvement, whether it is digital or in person, by all means, people enjoy and learn together. So that has been my biggest learning, and a success at Sapphire Foods. Second, and I'll keep it very short. I see that we're running quite fast on clock. You know, it is important for us to ensure that you've got right cohorts getting into programs. You know, gone are the days of calendarization. You had a calendar, training calendar, and people went in like a factory, came out like on a conveyor belt. Those are days of passe. I think it has to be cohort based, need based, individualized. It has to be a combination of everything. And when we do that, and when we keep in mind that it is objective driven, there is a need, and we ensure that we're monitoring it, I think we find our way home. And tech helps us scale. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandeep. I think that, I think keeping it outcome focused, I think was a big one that you said. I think that rallies people around, ensures that, people are not switched off and they're connected to everything that's happening. Swati, you've come from the pharma business, and there has been like, 24/7, like what Nishigandha was saying. And how's this whole process of, one, virtual training, and two, the personalization of it, how's that panned out in your organization and industry?
Yeah, thanks, Raj. And I think a lot has already been said. So I will try to keep it succinct and brief, and try to capture the insights that I feel and the experiences from the industry that I come from. So one is that for me, I firmly believe it's a lot about learning as an enriched experience. At the heart of it, are we making it an experience which is highly engaging and immersive for the learner? And I think all of us have spoken about it. Like, it is more about keeping the learner at the center. So what is it that will give the learner joy, ease, and also make the learner feel connected with the rest of the organization and the community, not just inside of the organization, but even outside? That's what we need to cater to. And what, Sandeep also spoke about, which means that there has to be a reason, a compelling reason for the learner to commit to the learning process. So defining that also is important. Then the experience becomes something which is not forced upon the learner, but there is a pull, an intrinsic pull that is created. And in fact, the whole idea of culture of learning is about creating that entire ecosystem wherein the learners, wherein the people who are a part of the learning and development fraternity in HR and business, everybody's committed to it. It's not an agenda which is run by the L&D department. That's how we have to view it. Now, if we have to ensure that the digital elements are soaked in and create for an immersive ecosystem and an experience, I would say it is about learning to digitalize and digitalizing to learn. That corollaries actually. So, when you get an element such as an AR/VR lab, which we have in Dr. Reddy's, we also dialed up our entire gamification, simulation, learning experience platform, the Myro tools, various kinds of plethora of tools available from Menti to so on and so forth. What we were trying to achieve in the entire process is to make, as I said, the whole experience very immersive and the ecosystem very connected. If this is what we were achieving, we were sort of making movements in the right direction. Also, I want to focus on another part, which is always remembering that it's not about a training solution, which means it's not a one-stop or a one size or a one solution. It is an experience which is going to be ongoing for the entire organization. So it's very important to prototype and also look at it from a design thinking lens. What is working and what is not? Putting in the business specs is equally important, because today's learners are also, what I would say, very curious to learn the right things. And therefore, it becomes a responsibility to curate contents. We went about creating a digital studio wherein we could, create and curate our own content and make it very meaningful. Now, in the pharma space, it was also important to keep the energy levels high, because, it was about working and learning together. So how do you create a semblance wherein they're not overwhelmed by the learning, but looking at it as an experience of growth? That is what helped us. Back to you, Raj, and you're on mute.
Thank you, Swati. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. The one thing which everybody has been saying, and I can hear this across from multiple speakers today, is that yes, everybody's trying to do different things, but this risk of losing the personal touch is certainly there, right? What are some of the things that you are doing to make sure that the personal touch with the learners, with trainees is maintained and they stay connected with the whole learning process on the one hand and the outcome on the other?
You're asking me, Raj, to go first?
Yeah, I'd like you to.
Yeah. So, in fact, our whole learning experience platform, we've called it I Learn. So, it is I learning. And it's all individualized, personalized learning journeys. So when we talk about, ensuring that those elements are all there, what we have tried to do is put together journey-based approaches where they are getting to connect and share with the peers, because that also increases the energy level. Also makes them dedicated in the learning journey to the end. So leaderboards, gamifications, those kind of, fun-like elements also keep them enthused in the process when they're knowing that how they are progressing. So we have to make it also very innovative in approach. So sometimes dabbling with music, different kinds of theater elements, getting in different modalities of learning also helps. Wherever possible, making it a phygital experience, which is physical and digital combined, also works. Infusing elements such as coaching and mentoring, which are beyond a very archetypical training kind of a mode, is also helpful, because then, whether it's a group coaching session or it's an individualized, people else also get to ask questions. And then there's a sense of satiety setting in that, okay, it is my journey, it is my ideas, or it is my queries that are being addressed. So how do you make it more personalized in that sense? I also spoke some time back about the joy and ease part of it. If we make it very cumbersome, like, long sessions, packing in too much, then, there is it's bound to fizzle off. The energy will fizzle off. So trying to ensure that there are short bursts and bites, not too much, which is making them feel overwhelmed, is also very helpful. The outside-in perspective always helps, because, for example, when we are at pharma, I always like to find out what's happening in retail. Jiva has been doing some very interesting stuff. So I'm just saying that many times it's about looking beyond your sectors. So that would be something that I would urge all companies to do. It has worked very well for us. Making the conventional brick and mortar kind of organization take up a project-based approach with more service orientation in the learning function will spice it up and ensure that this kind of an engagement sticks. Last but not the least, I think the top management or the leaders have a huge responsibility. They need to role model behaviors and walk the talk. When they become learning heroes, sharing their vulnerabilities, their success stories, their failings, all of that, then everybody thinks that, okay, if my leaders are committing to learning, I better go that way and travel along.
Thanks, Swati. I think thank you, Swati. I think hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think you also answered a few of the audience questions that came in on the chat bot, on the chat box which was there, about how do you make sure it's outside in, and how do we make sure there's a balance between the machine and the learner. Ratnam, one question which is, in this, one thing which has happened over the last couple of years is that a lot of organizations have invested a lot in digitizing learning, be it in infrastructure, content development, whatever. What have you done to measure the return on that investment over the last 2 years?
Yeah, you're right, Raj. I think getting a platform, running numerous, training sessions, working on content, it all adds to cost, and it's extremely important to actually look at it from the business outcome per se, very important to work very closely with the business so that whatever you design, whatever you create is in alignment with what the business really needs. Finally, we are actually seeking funds from them for whatever we do.
But
So,
how do we done specifically to measure the return?
Yeah. I'm getting to that. So it's very important to actually set compelling objectives. While you look at the Kirkpatrick model and you say that I have a reaction, I have a feedback, I can actually look at pre, post, etc. But it's very important to see what my deliverable is going to be and how much important is it for the organization to look up to that deliverable. And if it is monitored closely by the business and by the learning team, then it becomes that much more impactful. So while we have put in money into developing content, or we have spent hours in training our people, it's important to get the business also to validate that. And more than us telling the business that, this is the ROI, the business should come and tell you that, yes, this is the benefit that we have got, out of the training. And that's the change that we have managed to get in the organization. I'll give you an example. We were actually looking at creating smart champions across the country, and this was more for the smart technology to be understood by our retail folks. And in the process, there was a need, firstly, to get our trainers certified, then get them to go around and train people. And what we told business is that we will have to do it individual by individual, ensure that we have more champions all across our stores. And we covered close to 5,000 people across the country. In order to measure the effectiveness, we told the business that probably you could look at your sell-through, or you could check on where they stand with regard to how they are conveying the message to the consumers, and what's the net outcome that is being desired by the business. So the business ran effectiveness programs to check whether or not we are able to deliver post training. And they started scoring us. They gave us a score of 67% to start, and then it rose from there to 95% now.
That's really good to hear.
That has been quite commendable. So in a way, that proves the effectiveness. Similarly, if you look at the wedding sales,
I'm going to interrupt you, sorry.
Yeah.
Because I think we're running a little out of time. So I think the point that you've raised, I think, are relevant in terms of how to measure effectiveness. I think I'm going to cut you there and not let you speak the next one. So I think we're running a bit short on time, and I have a couple of questions that have come in both on the audience track as well as directly.
It's okay, Raj. Thank you.
So I'm going to move on to staying on this thing of keeping the balance between the personal touch and the machine. One of the things is, I think a lot of you have spoken about it, is about how do you keep the fun element going. Yeah. So if I can request Jiva to throw a bit of more light on this one, how do you keep the fun element in training going, especially in the virtual space?
Yeah, Raj, I think I touched upon a few points earlier. So the way we gamify things, using virtual reality, using Mentimeter, Padlet, so all these icebreakers. So these are some of the elements we are using in fun learning. I also recall, as I think Nishikanta talked about this, I believe. So, and then Sandeep also, humanizing organization. I think that's the foundation. So when you're talking about humanizing organization, I just recently I read something from Dave Ulrich. He said MBCI, managed by checking in. And knowingly or unknowingly, I do it in all my meetings. So first 5-10 minutes, we talk about some of the personal stuff, and some of the learning what we learn from each other. I think that check-in is very important in recent times, and I think most of the leaders, they consciously, they do it. No, there is a personal connect first before getting into the business. Of course, you are not going to compromise on the performance, but still it is important to have a personal connect, and that empathy is very, very important. And I think knowingly or unknowingly, I personally practice, and most of my team members also practice this. And second thing is they also carry the same thing with trainers. So every training program, if it is a virtually led program, so first a few minutes, we used to play some games and call it as an icebreaker. I'm going beyond that. No? It's about having a personalized, empathized conversation. So when you are empathizing the conversation, and you're not only talking to the employee, and most of the time the conversation is also be listened to by the family members. You're also addressing the extending family members. They know who's your bad boss and who's your good and colleague also. So this conversation is very important, that we do it in all the sessions. The first 10 minutes or 5 minutes, it's more personal connect. And the technology, as I told you, we are using a lot of things for the gamified VR or ER and all this stuff. And one more interesting thing is micro-learning. Micro-learning, in fact, now if I have to really compare, there is an increase of 313% increase in terms of usage of micro-learning. Micro-learning, it's not about only just 2 minutes video or something. It is a story. So we create some excitement, and then there is a half-finished story, and we invite people to complete the story. So there is an engagement at the same time they do it, and it is substituted by a lot of micro reels like Insta reels. There is a micro reels, there is micro podcast, and there are a lot of things. So that's how the shorter elements, shorter content, and then democratizing content. It make it really funny, and then they are also be part of this.
Thank you, Jiva. Thanks a lot. I think that's quite a few things which are being done to make sure that it's the fun element is kept there. Meenakshi, can I ask you, do we have more time, or are we run totally out of time? Because there are a couple of questions that are still there.
You could take the question, sir.
All right. So I'm going to ask Sandeep, and one point which has come up is while a lot of things are being done, what are some of the new challenges that are being thrown? Because I think there's a lot of good being done today, and there's effectiveness being measured on the one hand, the fun element is being kept in place. People are trying to keep the personal touch as much as possible, but it's still early days. The jury is still out as to whether the personal touch is really maintained or not, I guess, from the feedback that we hear. But what are some of the fresh challenges that you see appearing ahead of you? Ahead of us as a learning community, and even from a business point of view, what are the fresh challenges on this element of virtual learning and the humanizing of it?
I think the biggest challenge, and I would say it calls for acute understanding of fine balance, is to be able to answer the question, when is it getting too much? And that's been traditionally an area where training was never too much. It was always a little less. Whenever you ask anyone, it's always a little less. And suddenly we're finding a shift in the whole way people are looking at learning and training. And very often I hear business leaders question, even participants question, is getting too much. Because what has happened is, in order to suddenly we've kind of got confused with engaging people is equal to training people. Earlier, engagement was equal to entertainment, and suddenly now engagement is equal to training. So I think the biggest challenge is to be able to find that balance between when is it getting too much, and we need to step back, continue to evaluate our interventions, and keep on answering back to yourself first as learning professionals, that am I doing too much? Am I going overboard? And then if there is a question from the business, be able to present that business case and tell them, look, it's not too much. This is just exactly what you need, neither too less, neither too much. I think that is one of the primary challenges that I face. Other than that, I think we're all equipped with everything else, and technology is helping us big time.
Thank you. apart from
I just want to add one more point. It's very
yes,
easy to get tempted and, follow things which are in fashion and in vogue, like a fad. Like, there are, we are spoiled for choice. There are so many tools available. So picking the best fits for the right cohort or the audience in the right measure and what will work in your context is very pertinent. So it can't be just, going all over. While best practices are important, learn and get inspired, draw lessons, but that bit about best fit also is equally important.
yeah, agree with you. I think best fit is one major thing. And apart from this thing of, is it getting too much and that finding the balance, Karanjit, would you say there are other fresh challenges which are popping up?
Yes, indeed, they are. So, for example, I'll give you a live challenge. Instagram Reel. Instagram Reel. Everybody gets attracted to it for a period of 15 to 30 seconds or 90 to 120 seconds. But that breaks the learning journey. And at the same time, it spikes up the attention level of the audience. That's pretty real. It remains. Gone are the days of the Facebook. And the audience is so charged up that they wouldn't mind coming back after a 1 or 2 minute so-called hiatus and saying that, could you please repeat that for us? We just missed it out over there. So that is challenge number one. Challenge number two, I would say, is the applicability of content. So it is indeed outcome driven. And yet at the same time, what happens is that there is an immediate sense of deja vu that would this work for me or not work for me? And how do I get it, applied in my sphere of work? So what necessarily needs to happen is that even if the intervention is for even as short as 15 minutes, there needs to be an absolute belief that now after investing my 15 minutes, now I can do the next piece of work far more effectively or efficiently, or even both. That is where the rubber hits the road now. So quickly coming up with simpler solutions, it's not necessarily content, to bring in an immediate sense of motivation, not gratification, motivation, saying that, yes, I'm in the right program, I am listening to the right person, and I know that after listening to this, I can apply this to make my life easier. I think for this to happen, content has to be extremely, extremely relevant to the need of the audience. And it is we who in a way decide the audience. It is we who partner with the business and come up with a learning solution. It is we who know what are the challenges. It is up to us to decide how to roll it out. But at the end of the day, if the ROI doesn't come, it all falls flat, no matter how short or big the intervention is. So yes, the challenges are there. They are slightly different, but that's the fun of learning. We keep on doing more. So in today's world, because of this intervention, fortunately, we are in a space where audience chooses to speak about and give feedback rather than just fill out those feedback forms or the monkey surveys. They would just say it straight on the face. So we give that environment for them to say, is it going to work for you or not? Is it going to help you to achieve your goals, your objectives, or your targets? If the immediate answer is yes, it gives us some level of confidence. But when we go back and share it with the business in terms of numbers, which we track, the business says, yes, there is a shift. And that is what gives us confidence.
Thanks, Karanjit. Thank you very much. You're saying multiple new challenges coming in, but at the same time, we as training professionals focusing on it, we'll be able to overcome it. To stay with that one point that you raised, and we talked about it several times, this thing of keeping the fun in training. I'm going to, at the end, ask Nishigandha to perhaps, while you spoke about some examples, Nishigandha, when you give us one example that perhaps of how at your organization, the fun element is maintained in training.
Thanks, Raj. Raj, the important thing is the trainers were working remotely. However, the team was there at the store, right? So we actually took the benefit or the advantage of it. And we actually, whatever they were learning, we made them record their own skit and present it to the trainer and that actually kept that learning and the experience which we talk about, like the role plays or the skit or whatever you are learning, demonstration of your learning skills, that kept on, that continued for us actually. That helped us a lot in, bringing that fun element and the liveliness of the training. And we could continue with that. At the same time, we had done that, we were like, when the, some of the people were affected and they were quarantined and they were not supposed to be there in the store. They were at their remote locations, their homes or wherever they were. We actually had formed groups, online groups, and we had given them the topics wherein they were planning the online skit or a online, in fact, we asked them to prepare a movie as well. And they kept on presenting it to the entire audience or the trainer. We did the recordings of those, some of the good movies or the good skits and presentations, and uploaded on our LMS so that everybody else can also actually see. I guess that kept on the fun element live.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. What I'm hearing everybody say is that yes, there's a lot of work being done to ensure that the humanization of training goes on. It is still early days, and there's constant improvement, innovation, new practices coming in. There's also this check on saying, how do we make sure that the return is there on that investment that is being made, both from money terms as well as otherwise from an effectiveness point of view. There's a lot of work being done on that element as well. Fun times, challenging times, but certainly I think what I'm hearing all of you say is that the learning function and the organization as a whole is doing its best to ensure that the personalization and the humanization of training continues, right? And that's doesn't become anonymous and dehumanized. Thank you so much for all those insights and those inputs that you all have given. I'm sure our participants would have gone away with quite a few learnings. I hand you over back to the organizers. Meenakshi, back to you. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for your
attention. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Raj.
Thanks, Raj. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much to the entire panel. A special thank you to Mr. R. Raj Narayan. Thank you so much. Thank you to Jeeva Balakrishnan, Sandhya Puri, Swati Sarangi, Karanji Tuppal, Nishigandha Kulkarni, Narayanan Sabaratnam. Thank you so much. It was a very, very informative, very thought-provoking panel. And I think we are all ready to win some gift vouchers. So I will get with a couple of questions in our audience quiz. Okay, so all our participants, all our delegates who are here, get ready. We're giving you a couple of questions. You already know exactly how they need to be answered. Okay, use your chat box, fastest finger first. And of course, the one first with the correct answer will win gift vouchers from Soulflower. Our first question, question code number 1818. Name the easy to use learning platform to create micro-learning courses in minutes, drive better digital learning adoption, remediate learning gaps, deliver continuous learning journeys to beat the forgetting curve. Name the easy-to-use learning platform to create micro-learning, etc., etc. I'm sure you know this. We had a session and this was widely discussed yesterday. Question code 18. Okay, you get 30 seconds. Question code 1. Our next question is question code 01. What is the theme for Retail L&D Summit 2022? What is the theme for Retail L&D Summit 2022? That's a sitter for anybody. If you look around, you'll find it all over the place. And our third question, question code 04. Question code 04. What is the ranking of Reliance Retail in the list of top global retailers? What is the ranking of Reliance Retail in the list of top global retailers? 3 questions. Type in your name and email ID, because if you've got it correct first, we email the Soulflower gift voucher to you. Please also type the question code along with your answer. Okay, so it's time now to move on to our next session. This will put the spotlight on optimizing L&D investments for business growth. It is a special session and it will be led by Dr. R. Karthikeyan. He holds an MPhil in clinical psychology from the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore, and a PhD in psychology from the University of Mysore. After a successful stint as a clinical psychologist, Dr. Karthikeyan diversified into management consulting with an emphasis on behavioral training and leadership development interventions. Over the past 3 decades, he has worked with several renowned retail organizations such as Raymond, ColorPlus, Big Bazaar, Reliance Retail, Lifestyle, Hatsun, Kirtilal, and Tanishq, to name just a few. He is an advanced practitioner of thinking skills, that's the theory of constraints, certified by the Goldratt Institute. He is a certified partner with Harrison's Talent Assessments, that's HATS, and was trained by Jack Phillips on ROI methodology at the ROI Institute, USA. He is a certified design thinking practitioner trained from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He is the founder and managing director, Gemba Management Consulting Private Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Dr. R. Karthikeyan. Dr. Karthikeyan, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think there is a dictum in saying when you do a film editing, they say you come late and leave early. That is the dictum of a film editing. They say that if the scene has to be sharp, you have to start late and end closer. So maybe this session is something similar to that, where I would start little late and end little too short, because I think the size of the crowd actually doesn't matter to me, though I think the Roy and good part of my Gemba team and a couple of you are there. We can have a meaningful discussion if whoever is there around can make sense into what we are talking about. Meenakshi is helping me with the slides, am I right?
Yes, Lawrence sir is going to project it, sir.
Yeah, I'm doing it, Dr. Karthikeyan.
Yeah, thanks.
Can I load it? Just let me know when.
Yeah, you can just go on. I just have a few points with the PPT, not going to run the entire one, but it will make a good sense for. First of all, yeah, that's fine. Same thing, same stuff. Yeah. First of all, thank you, Rai, and thank you, Dr. Lawrence Fernandez. Nice seeing you. In fact, we met during the People Matters conference. Jiva introduced us, and glad to see you. And nice to know Meenakshi.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, thanks for supporting us once again.
Yeah, and thanks to Jiva. He was very keen that I speak on this. In fact, very honestly, I think ROE is something which is very underrated and grossly misunderstood and rarely practiced. So I picked this up for the first assumption is people might think that
hello, Dr. Karthikeyan. Dr. Karthikeyan, may I just interrupt? You mentioned that we are a very small number.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Dr. Karthikeyan, you mentioned that we are a very small number. The number doesn't matter. We are a very small number on this platform. But there's another platform there where there are about 200 people listening in, sir.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So I just thought I'd correct that misinformation. Okay, thanks, sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Like I said, even if it's 8 or 200, I think the quality would remain the same. And I'm glad there are 200 other side and who would really kind of benefit from this. ROE is something which is very grossly understood and not been very much put into good use. So I was trained with Jack Phillip, and I thought I will use this platform to talk about what you can do. So that's it. Next slide, please. So this is about my trumpet, and it's already blown. You don't need to take time on it. Next, please. So to give you some idea about the work we have been doing in the retail sector, I've been working on the cross-functional alignment with the senior level teams. Brand DNA Jiva was very instrumental in doing this for Raymond's. We helped a lot of supply chain versus sales functions, right from the days of Ashok Leyland, we have been doing sales and into creating and content for front-end training for a lot of retail. And can you go on, please? And impact of leadership training, store audit, sales effectiveness, we did for Kirtilas, we did for into Tanishq, and we help into dealership development for Gold Plus for into Tanishq. We were involved using psychometrics and using a service champion programs, especially on the Ron Kaufman's model. We have been doing across industry and a lot to do into design thinking for seniors, especially the folks into leaders in terms of innovation. So this is just a broad and contours of the work I've been doing for the retail industry. And I can tell you that the challenges are very new, and I feel it's very important to optimize the investment, and that's why I picked up the topic. Next slide, please. The classic dilemma goes like this. If you have a medicine, you have 10 people and you have 10 doses of a medicine. You need for a person to be alive, you need to give the 10 in doses for 5 days. What do? Would you give for all the 10, one each equally, and all of them die? Or make 9 of them die and give the one to one person, make it alive? This classic dilemma is very closer to, I would say, people who are into the you spray across. Unfortunately, I see many companies, what they do is try to spray it across equally and work on the input factors a lot. I'll tell you what you mean by input factors. So the number of days of adherence and number of programs, and trying to satisfy everyone everywhere around. So in a sense, it's like trying to kill all attitude. And ROI gives you to tell where the money is. Make sure that you invest where your ROI is. Now, ROI is not just scores. ROI is not good stories. ROI is clearly on the numbers. And Jack Phillips' model is an extension of Kirkpatrick with a much more scientific tone into it. And very clearly, if an organization is willing to work on into cost versus benefits very clearly, and if they are willing to be transparent on it, any of your intervention can go in terms of ROI into numbers. And today, I think one of the factors that most of the L&D folks are having a problem is we are not able to go more than some statistical data. We are not able to talk very concretely like a CFO on a board. So this model will give you that, and I'll quickly go through it. And like I say, a 3-part structure. First 5-10 minutes we'll warm up, 5 minutes we'll warm up, 15-20 minutes we'll talk about, and last 10-15 minutes we'll take the Q&A. I think that should help. Next, please. So the do you really look in terms of measuring ROI? This is what exactly I heard. When we say ROI, most of the people look in terms of earlier levels of feedback, like in terms of happy sheet or pre-post test. In my last so many years, I can say that not even 2 to 3% went up to a level of ROI. Many times we may go up to a third level into business impact, but not more. And even on ROI, we don't go for a full-fledged, we don't actually, some of the key interventions, when you're going to a lot of, are you into measuring the ROI? So next, please. Our evaluation framework clearly talks about 5 levels. It may sound like the nomenclature is slightly different, and I will show you why it is so. The first talks about the emotional aspect. It's about the engagement. Someone was talking about an engagement. In fact, I am working a lot on engagement, and I'll just give you a good tip for all those who are there in the earlier session. I'm giving you the neuropsychology of your learning. If you want an ice breaking, increase your increase your parasympathetic activity. Like whichever makes you to relax, whichever brings down your anxiety. If you want attention during the program, increase your sympathetic activity, asking a question, making them engage. drawing their attention, putting them intellectually engaged and challenged, making them to perform. All these things raise a very clear ANS approach, autonomous nervous system approach. You can play along with the participants, whether it is digital or offline. Having said that, the number one, the first model is typically the engagement model. How do you really like it? What's the preference and what is the mode? And very ancient. For a long time, we were calling this as the evaluation, just typically a feedback, whether it is a happy sheet or scores or instant and digital scores across. This is about level one, which is very important, but not very wholesome. It's a good place to start with. Second level talks about, in fact, I'll give you examples of all these things in the slides to come before I close this. Learning talks about a cognitive model, typically what goes in, what do you really know about it? So a shift in terms of your learning, in terms of your knowledge, what do you really take in? So this shows about, I didn't know this and now I know this, okay? And typically the pre-post test, engagements, and during a Q&A, and many methods are there. And technically loaded with learning is a hard part of a technical training where people learn their jobs predominantly here. So that's your number two. Number three goes on, like how much of it gets onto the job? Does it turn into a kind of behavioral impact? How many times he goes for the same program and come back and do the same kind of behavior again? But can I say, in fact, when you talk about, I used to always jokingly say the communication programs 25 years back were there, and we used to think all of them might come down, but I'm seeing the names have changed basically, but they are still there in the various forms. So what are you going to really work on? What are the kind of behavioral parameters you work on? When you talk about service, the parameter is different. When you talk about a sale, the parameter is different. When you talk about a support service, the parameter is different. Or when you talk about someone who is handling a legal suit, what could be that? So typically, or someone is. So what is the kind of behavioral actions which are required on the job, which he has to demonstrate through this L&D intervention? This is number three. Number four captures clearly on like how we talk about cost, we talk about waste, we talk about sale, we talk about inventory, where does it show up on? So the fourth level is the business impact. And the fifth clearly talks about an ROI, which is a number. Very clearly there's a formula and there's a way of calculating all the costs at one side and all those kind of benefits at the other side. And there's a formula. So this is exactly your ROI framework. Can I have the next slide, please? So in fact, this is it's slightly older research to old if I'm right. RO Institute and ATD did this and found that are into measuring and what kind of importance have been given. I will share these slides to you. Let's not go into it. It talks about what are currently being kind of measured, but what is the standard to be measured and how it is rated on the importance. Okay. Interestingly, awards which are not a part of the learning takes number 3 because people like to be a part of it. So how CEOs perceive L&D, this is a very interesting data to be. If it's a longer thing, we can churn on this. Can I have the next slide, please? We can move on. Now, this is exactly your ROI, where your program benefit and your program costs. Typically, the dividend is a BCR, okay, where that is the benefit cost ratio. But if you want to do an ROI, that is the net program benefit. That is what comes by the program cost into 100. So which means BCR is technically meant for NGOs. If I spend 10 rupees, am I doing the work or does my 10 rupee does the job of a 10 rupee? So which means 1 is a good answer. But there in a business scenario, if I spend 1 rupee, if I invest 10 rupees, can I at least get 15 rupees? So 50% ROI. So ROI is more used in terms of business context, whether the business, where the BCR typically the benefit cost analysis goes more in terms of NGO. Okay, I'll quickly run through this and stop you and tell you why it is important, where it can make a lot of dent into your training calendars. Next, please. Yeah, so we don't need to put all the programs into an ROI evaluation, which is not my advice to. Like you say that first 3 levels, 80 to 90% of the programs are good enough. Critical programs, 30% can be looked for your application based, 10% for impact, and 5% of your programs. That is typically the Pareto principle, which brings in, you need to at least do that. So out of all the top 5% needs to have a cut on your ROI. You need to do an impact assessment. Now I'll just run through the next 4 slides back to back, and we'll keep the time for queries and discussions. Next, please. Next, please. So level 0, they call, is the kind of statistics which an L&D department usually keep up with. Number of programs, participant, hours, efficiency, cost, whatever has been as the inputs to it. Okay, and which is already there, and this typically flows from the budget. Whereas number 1 talks about the reaction, emotional reaction, which would give you an indication. To me, this is like a net promoter score, typically. Would you like to recommend this program to someone? What is the choice of the preference? How does it appeal? And what do you see in the currentness of it? Interesting, the motivation. I was talking to Meenakshi and said, you call this a motivation session, but if anything happens in terms of motivation, that is an unexpected side effect. I'm not going to touch on it. So I was having a conversation. So how much it is inspiring, how much it is connecting, how much is engaging, is in terms of methodology, relevant. All these things are measured in the level 1. Next, please. Level 2 talks about the information, about the knowledge, about your understanding, capabilities. Very interestingly, even your contacts. If you go to a program and pick up the numbers of people who attend the program, that's also new learning. You learned a few people from other sector, networking, and the kind of confidence you picked up. You think you can do this program by yourself coming back. That's a learning. You learn self-confidence. You learn certain skills. All these things get onto the level 2. Level 3 talks about the use of this information, use of the knowledge, and how do you take this to kind of complete a task? How do you take it to formulate a procedure? How do you take it to understand how it works here? What are the enablers? What are the blocks? So typically level 3 is when you try to apply a learning into inside your organization. Typically when you start really applying, most of the time we start really learning about something when we get into the level 3, because level 1 is more ego boosting, and level 2 talks about your cognitive transfer, but level 3 is really, are you fit to train this? When you start training what you have learned, you know the gaps, and you need the time to revisit again. Is it the right way that I have picked up? So that's your 3. And level 4, next slide, please. Level 4 talks about all the things which we are factors. What are these put on, whether it is productivity or whether it's going to be sales or in compliance or bringing your and compliance down, service issues or your delivery time, your cycle time reduction, your inventory, efficiency, whatever you are finally looking at. The reason for this entire program is built on, talks about. Number 5 is, what is your ROI? At a slightly primitive level, what is your kind of BCR? What is the payback period? Like you said, someone is talking about a digital transformation. So when do you really kind of measure this? We have put in so much money. When do you think you will actually get this money back? And what is the kind of cost? Interestingly, when I learned this program from Jack Phillip, in fact, I went to Dubai to undergo this program, 50-hour program. I was very surprised and very curious even to know that crime department of US, they have a clear cost numbers for say a murder or any of the crimes. So first we were really taken aback. How can you look at a cost of a crime? The cost of the crime is clearly looked upon the numbers of the people and the system cost to service the crime. Okay, right. Am I audible now?
Yes,
Am
you
I
are.
audible now?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
you are. Please continue.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think those are the where we can actually convert everything into a cost, everything into a benefit. There is a number, and very clearly those are kind of validated by the methods of statistics, and you can actually bring about a number. There's a lot of intangibles which we don't need to touch upon. Let them stay as an intangible. It can be like image, it can be reputation, it can be a morale, it can be teamwork, it can be a bonding. Not, we don't need to convert. See, there are certain intangibles we can leave as, like for example, the training managers issue is you solve a problem, okay, or you do something where you actually prevent a firefighting environment. How do you calculate the cost of this? Okay, like I used to do a lot of work for trade union people. So how do you really calculate? Because if you don't do the program, there could have been certain things which would have affected your productivity. But now this has been done, there is an opportunity cost. So we have very interesting into methods, proven, valid ways of looking at this. What I would very strongly advise is, we can go on to the next slide. I'll take another 5 minutes, then I will allow a lot of discussion to go on. We need to be very clear about where we want to really have an impact. What are our major payoff needs for the company? Many times, in fact, someone asked me to do a training audit for a company. I can't name the company. They have about 650 programs in the year, and some of them don't really appear like an L&D initiative, but it all comes under a training budget. They kind of justify by the number of programs predominantly on a level 0. So I think your payoff needs are so important, in which your ROI objective can be paired. So this is a very beautiful model, and I'm there to share the slides. Who is interested can from ROI. ROI is that if you really look in terms of, not all our programs need to go on the top. Some of them can be like, some of them can stay with the level 2, no harm. If you're going to train a frontliner, I think, and you don't know the longevity of the person inside your organization, I think a good level 2 is good enough. Your learning objectives can be worked on. So your entire thing, business alignment and forecasting, depends on what is that you want to measure, at what level, and how much you're going to put the money there. And I can say it's not at all difficult to do that. It's a very simple, if you are this model, you can appreciate the model, you can be an internal anchor, you can learn this, imbibe this to yourself. Next slide, please. So it all takes on how do you really plan this evaluation, and how do you collect the data? Like for example, how do you really, especially on a higher end data, like on the costs, what are the actual costs you do that? Okay, many times there are a lot of hidden costs, indirect costs are there, and which are not very straightforward. So how do you analyze the data? How do you really get onto it? And how do you optimize the results and tell the management where to focus on? These are the stages of it. To me, I think my centerpiece of this entire 20 minutes conversation is that Next slide. Invest disproportionately on the mission critical business need. I think gone are the days where we want to satisfy everyone, everything, and put everywhere. Instead, I think you need to pick on your top few needs and put all the money over there, because that's where it's going to really get aligned to the business. And as a person who was started as a freelance trainer, then into training manager, then to run a training company, now into training evaluation, and also being into head of a training association, both at India as well as international level, most of the problems which people are grappling with is how do you convert into numbers and how do you tell your CFO, CHRO, justify your cost, justify your investment. So I think this is a great model and which can work, which can solve a lot of issues. Certainly we can make a conscious call not to touch on few areas, but many areas I'm sure we can do that. I've been just on time, I guess. I stop here and take about, we should have at least 10 minutes of if I'm right. Thank you very much. How can I go on, or someone is going to mediate the questions?
I think Meenakshi is going to mediate a few questions. Meenakshi?
Yeah, sir, we have an audience question which says, just a second.
How to prioritize programs basis?
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, see, whose priority is the question? Like, if you're going to take, put your need and see at what level are you going to run a program which is of educative, more of education, then it is a level 2 program. Spend accordingly. Or you need to definitely give an onboarding exercise and there's a bit of a learning there, 1 and 2. You want them to go and talk differently from tomorrow. I want my sales guys to be not X but Y, because cultural fabric, we understood this is your brand. That's your level 3. I want this entire intervention to cut my cost, inventory cost into this, come what may, level 4. And I really want to understand this level 5 as a number. So I think you need to understand your needs first, business needs first. Earlier, about 30 years back, initially it was all driving from a performance appraisal or individual request. But today, I think largely, even though we take up as a part of development needs, predominantly it flows from the business. We know on the top what is important for the years, what is the kind of sensitivities involved, and where are those. So the entire thing about the program, into what you call design, can be planned on that. Should we put an organizational need or learner need? That's exactly what I said. The learner needs are important, but how much you're going to spend for that? And suppose someone says, I want to learn about calligraphy. Are you going to teach him calligraphy? Is his job is going to get connected to calligraphy where he's going to bring some payback to you for the process? Then it's fine. But if he's going to say something slightly away from it, slightly away, it's not going to have business. It is only an engagement strategy. You're just going to make him feel good about it. But if it's going to be driving a change, there's a change. I've been a part of.
You're not audible.
Hello. Am I not audible?
Now you're audible. So earlier we had problem hearing you.
I'm sorry. So if I'm saying that if the need comes from the business, then the investments are higher. If the need is individual based, if it is not connected to a business, then investments are lower. That is the prioritization. My Wi-Fi is stable, actually. I'm surprised why we have this. I know it's not a quick take. You can take this in about 25 minutes. I took 50 hours And it's very easy to understand as a one line, but to get convinced and start working as a model, you need both exposure and practice. But I can strongly advise that get onto this thought process, which is good. Even if you're not getting into ROI, if you're not getting into this particular Jack Phillip model, if you ask the question how much it is kind of mission critical and where am I going to put money, I think that will be a good exercise start. Typically, this is for a planners, someone for a L&D leader. This is a very important skill and capability, I guess.
So we have another question which says, what if the organization and individual needs are not aligned?
Yeah, you need to take a call. You need to have a call on this. Typically, it's a HR process, right? You have actually finite number in the budget. And if this is integrated, it's fine. If it's not integrated, this cannot be a part of your L&D. Suppose there is a wellness need, okay? And you don't have a wellness budget. I have seen it people putting into L&D. That could be a conscious call. If you think that is going to affect the performance and you want to train them certain things, then it is an L&D. But if you want to give them into counseling skills, because from my background of clinical psychology, I've been largely involved. So that's an area where I'm talking about. Then don't expect an ROI in those areas. Stay aside and say this is an individual need. It's for engagement. It's for health. It's for wellness. And L&D is only a kind of methodology to drive it. What I'm saying is be very clear about your needs, and then you will be able to evaluate. To understand the needs, you have this evaluation model in place.
Meenakshi, any further questions?
No, Yugo, you can take over.
Okay, fine. Mr. Karthikeyan, any last words?
No, I'm glad for exposed to Rai, because I think Rai, especially the retail organizations, require this because you are into a maturing sector and you need this ROI model in place, and we are all handling a day at a time. So I would strongly advocate ROI model to be looked up by your L&D, especially the people who are involved in the R&D part of L&D. Thank you very much, and I wish if I can be of some support, always willing to support you. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Karthikeyan.
Thank you, Dr. Karthikeyan. Thank you so much. That was a very, very informative and educative presentation by you. And we really appreciate all the tough, all the inputs that you've given us. And we do hope that we will be able to bring you back for more and more of our sessions. Also reassure you that there have been around 300 delegates on the delegates platform who have been tuned in. Okay, this is only for speakers and presenters and the REI team. Okay, Dr. Karthikeyan, there will be a small token of our appreciation and gratitude in your mailbox. It's a e-voucher from Shopper Stop, so do accept it with our gratitude.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Good luck for everyone.
Thank you, sir. Okay, guys, it's time for a couple of questions, a couple of quiz questions once again. So let's go with question code number 7. Question code number 7. We'll give you the answers and the winners after the next session. Okay. Question code 7. Name any 2 organizations which use the B Sharp platform. Question code 7. Sorry. Name any 2 organizations which use the B Sharp platform. Our next question, question code 12, 1 to 12. How many learners does Disperse cater to across India, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East? Question code 12, 1, 2. How many learners does Disperse cater to across India, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East? And question code 26, 26. Name the gifting partners and the event partner of Retail L&D Summit 2022. There are 3 names to be mentioned. Name the gifting partners, there are 2 of them, and the event partner of Retail L&D Summit 2022. Okay, so fire your answers in on the chat box. Just as we've told you, you need to mention your name and email ID so that if you're the first with the correct answer, we know where to send your gift voucher. And of course, don't forget when you write your answer and type in the question code as well. Coming up right now, we go in with our next session. But before I introduce our panel to you, I'd like to tell you that immediately after this panel discussion, we are going to go with the awards ceremony of the Retail L&D Awards. This morning, we had 9 finalists shortlisted by our preliminary jury make their presentations before the grand jury, 5 in the organizational category, 4 in the individual category, and immediately after this panel discussion, we will declare the winners. So do everyone stay on and enjoy the award ceremony that we have for you. And yes, we will also send you a feedback link after the conclusion of this event on your email IDs, a litmus feedback link, which you need to send your feedback on. This will only help us give you better programs in future. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please mention that in your feedback. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, coming up right now, our next panel discussion, Embracing the Gig Economy, Impact on Learning and Organizational Culture. Please put your hands together and welcome our distinguished panel. She is Vice President HR, Bharti AXA Life Insurance. A warm welcome to Dhanashri Thakkar. He is Country Leadership and Competence Manager, IKEA. A warm welcome to Isuru Kalamulla Waduge. She is Chief Human Resources Officer, Metro Brands. Please welcome Nandini Mehta. She is Vice President, L&D Big Basket. Please welcome Neelam Aluwalia. He is Customer Care Associate and Associate Vice President, Shopper Stop Limited. A warm welcome to Saurabh Deshpande. Please welcome the Head of Capability Development. A warm welcome to Sonal Singh. And moderating our session is Strategic Growth Consultant, Seema Arora Nambiar. A warm welcome to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and it's over to Seema Arora Nambiar, our moderator, to take us through this session.
Thank you, Hugo. And thank you to Rai for having all of us. Let me start off, by just talking about a little bit about the gig economy. So when the panel kind of got together, I think a lot of us asked the question, what is gig employment? So 85% of India's economy actually works on informal jobs, which are single one-time jobs and essentially add back to the economy, but there isn't a formal employment contract. What you're seeing over the last maybe about 10 years is a lot of change that's happened because people have now started to put together technology platforms that bring these kind of informal workers into a structure or a formal environment. There are various tiers, and obviously it starts off with our junior most workforce, which is really the one that delivers the consumer experience when it comes down to retail. And then as you go on, there could be single project people who would work in either the field of technology or even in L&D, that matter, or marketing. A lot of consultants who help in specific areas. There's a recent BCG study that actually has put together saying if we had gig employees actually contributing the way that they should, we could add almost about 1.5% to the GDP of India. Now, while there are a lot of advantages to obviously gig employees coming on board, there are also some challenges. And as a result of it, there is going to be, especially when it comes to the organization structure piece, and it comes down to the whole learning and development section, which is what we're going to kind of try and address today through the panel. Sorry about the adjustment. If you just give me a minute. All right, I hope that's okay, Meenakshi.
Yes, it's better.
Yes, Seema, yes.
All right, so let's start off, with a few questions, and I'm sure that all the panelists have had some experience with gig employment. So Neelam, let's start with you. Given that you're in the most new age business of all of us, what has been your experience with getting gig employees, and what was the reason why you started with this?
So thank you, Seema, and thank you for that introduction. Thanks, Rai. So I think, so Seema, gig workforce has always been there. So if, you very rightly said that in L&D, we use a lot of coaches, leadership consultants, or for that matter, for marketing, you use a lot of website blog writers. So that has always been there. But I think in my belief, 2-3 things that contributed to it surging up. One is, you're right, the online platforms and the ability for all of them to come together. Secondly, I think COVID. So now that the normal employee is working from home and I'm comfortable with it, my comfort with somebody else working remotely and being able to deliver I think that trust has gone up, right? So I think COVID just accelerated it. It would have happened. Maybe it would have taken another 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but COVID just accelerated. So that's the part of the employer looking at it. And that's the reason why we also hired. So, we need a lot of workforce that needs to come. And the permanent job, I must say 5 years or 6 years back when I joined, everybody wanted, even a delivery boy wanted to have a permanent job, even not stay. But today they're okay with it. Today, I think it's cool to say I'm a freelancer or I'm a consultant. Maybe 10 years back, it was not. So I think both ways, we got comfortable with it. They got comfortable with it. There is no societal pressure to have a permanent 9 to 6 job for them. And there is no stigma that we have that if you are a freelancer, you may not deliver whatever it is. And that kind of contributed to the growth of both us and the economy. So I think that really helped us.
Thank you so much, Neelam. Nandini, you come from a more traditional retail kind of a setup, but you've also talked about, an increase in terms of gig employment. What to your mind has added, to your increase in the gig employment category?
Very good evening to everyone. So I think, apart from what Neelam just mentioned about COVID being one of the reasons, I think another big reason is also startup companies. Startup companies really don't have, that much of, I would say they would not want to invest initially on huge manpower. So they end up hiring gig employees to be able to deliver on certain projects and, certain key deliverables that are there where they come, finish something and then just leave. So I think, startups is one of the reasons. The other reason is, a lot of millennials that are there who see, full-time employees working extra hours, long hours. I think, the whole perception that has been created about full-time employees working in organizations has also led millennials to think that they don't want to work full-time. They would rather work in multiple organizations, working on various projects, learning more, being free, giving themselves some free time as well. So I think that is another reason that I could think of. And apart from that, I think a lot of freelancing platforms that are available today, where, where various consultants and freelancers can actually work on and reach out to various organizations so that they can be hired to actually do contract work. So I think I would say these are three, apart from COVID being one of the reasons. Yeah.
Okay. So interestingly, we also have Dhanashree, who's from banking and finance. And while traditionally all of us understand retail, Dhanashree, you wanted to, help us with where has Bharti AXA been able to use gig employees effectively?
So I must say that, I do have employees in my team who are gig employees. And what I want to call out, building on what's been said earlier, I think a lot of times we equate gig with contract or short term, and not, from where gig word itself comes from, it's about gathering experiences for me, specific skill sets. And unfortunately, it's still not seen in the same light. Okay. So to what Neelam said about the need for contract employment, or the discomfort with it, I think it's still not as comfortable, because I would just say that if all of us as HR professionals were to review some of the CVs and were to hire, okay, or in our own profiles, we have these 1 year, 6 month stints, okay, I don't think we've still changed the lens of, still looking at the resume traditionally, that, oh, 6 months, 1 year, instead of looking at that, what has the employee gathered as experience in that span of time. Okay. In my team, for example, I struggled with getting resources. I wanted someone who's an L&D expert. And unfortunately, the capabilities within are still at a very, very junior level. If I want someone with experience to come on board, it's still a struggle. So finding skill is a challenge. Having said that, at Bharti AXA, in capabilities like underwriting, or for example operations, we have experimented, but there is still a lot of work to do, not because of lack of openness, but I think from skills which are available, the need for something which is more long term, the need for something which is still perpetual, changes which have not happened from a mindset perspective on how we address performance, and how we are open. A lot of regulations in terms of employment, or having dual employment or 2-3 employments, have not really undergone a change fundamentally.
Yeah, so I mean, so what I'm hearing you say is that it's really about getting higher level skill in, even if it's specific to a job, or which you may not have need of as a full-time role, because it's very specific to a certain target role, and that may not be easily available for a full-time role, or have a need for a full-time role. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am. And I'm actually calling out that, a gig can also be full-time without the 8-hour spectrum, so there is need of redefining that itself. Sure. Saying I need let's say, I need a certain marketing expertise, but I need it for a certain period of time, hours per day or whatever. Okay, correct. But so I need it over the year or 2 years. Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So Nandini, just coming back to you, within your structure of traditional retail, can you talk about some of the roles that you've actually used? So Dhanushi gave a great example of her own team. Within your organization, what kind of roles, have you been able to actually use for gig employees?
Sure. So I can immediately think of 3 roles. So one is, of course, in the HR team, where, we are just building the entire HR team, and there was a need to close positions quickly. So we actually got someone who's already, like doing multiple projects to actually work with us to close on certain positions. So basically someone in the TA area, talent acquisition area. So that's one position I can think of. So it's like for a short term, but not necessarily working only for us. The second position that I can think of is we have a new legal head, and the earlier legal head, basically has retired. So we have extended his expertise as a mentor, working with us for a period of time. So that's another position that I can think of. And the third that we recently hired was someone in the visual merchandising expertise area. So that is, very specifically on certain deliverables that we are looking at to enhance the entire visual merchandising and displays in our stores. So these are 3 positions I can think of where we've hired gig employees over the last year and a half. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Those are pretty senior positions.
Yes.
Which actually takes me to my next question. So while, there's a value with people coming in with very specific skill, as L&D professionals, we all understand that there is an underlying culture and an underlying work ethic that the company actually breeds over a period of time. And consumer experience or consumer loyalty, feeds off that. And if you look at lots of examples of companies, people actually go back because of the people. So I'm just going to take the next question to Isru. Can you talk, Isru, a little bit to me about what have you seen as differences that come into the organization because of this blend of full-timers and gig employees?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I think this also is very much dependent on the sort of sector or business that you're working in. If I look at it from an IKEA perspective, when we look at the skills that we require that we don't have in the organization today, and IKEA as a business in India is currently expanding quite extensively. And what we're finding today is that we don't have the skills or the qualities to be able to, for example, build up our units, to be able to showcase what we want to really show our customers the full width and depth as we have in other countries. So what we do is we bring in freelancers for a very short period of time. It could be between 3 to 6 months, where they come in and their purpose and sole assignment is to secure that the unit is ready to open and ready to invite customers in. So when you look at the skill sets that they bring in, it's a very high level amount of skills and experience that they bring into the organization. And without that, we probably wouldn't be able to open up the stores that we have in India today. And going forward, we probably have the same challenges as well. So for us, that experience is quite pivotal and quite vital. And we don't find that today. So using the gig economy, this really allows us to really be able to continue on our expansion plans without having any hindrance.
But do you think there is do you face a challenge in terms of blending, people who are not from within with your existing employees?
To be honest, no. We've not really had any challenges in this way. And for us, when we talk about these freelancers, they're actually people who actually worked in IKEA before as well, who've actually built a career within IKEA and then gone out and said, actually, now I want to be a freelancer. And they're probably perfect examples of gig workers, because they value the fact that they can, work when they want to, they can earn the right amount of money that they want to, and they're also happy to go from one place to another. So coming to your question, is there a difficulty for us to integrate them into the existing workforce? We've not seen that ourselves.
Sure. Saurabh, how about you at Shopper Stop? Do you see a challenge as you're going into, a blended workforce? Are you seeing any challenges in terms of, just making sure that your culture and your organization structure and, the whole talent management, all of that part, is there any risk you see by integrating the blended workforce? Saurabh? All right, I think we've lost Saurabh for a bit. So Sonal, you
am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Okay, you're back. Yes, Saurabh.
Okay. Thanks. So that was just an example of how technology can work at any given point of time and why you require people around to support you in such cases when business dynamics change. So, it purely depends on the complexity, confidentiality, and the criticality of the project. But yes, we certainly see that the overall percentage of the gig employees is going up, and it's going to be higher now. I guess challenge would be reduced if we are able to bring the gig employee up on the curve or bring aboard very quickly. When we are talking about culture piece of it, I think culture is nothing else but the way we treat people and the way they feel.
A challenge?
Come again?
Are you seeing a challenge currently?
So the challenge, that's what I'm saying. The challenge that happens is when we are getting people on board, you have to make them get on to the project very quickly, get comfortable with that team particularly, because they are going to be for a short time and they are going to get into that team, the working style of that team very quickly. And if that happens, the advantage is they get on the project very quickly. The biggest advantage that I have seen is we've seen employees who over a period, because of the culture, because of the warmth and connect that they have seen in Shopper Stop, at a later stage, they want to renew the contracts more and more. Secondly, over a period, if somebody has done, taken this piece particularly to complete their higher education or for a short stint because they have returning mothers, they have shown interest in joining Shopper Stop back. And we have had cases where employees have joined from a contract to becoming a permanent employee, or somebody who had taken a break in between for a couple of years have come back and demonstrated that interest. I think that's the biggest advantage of
Okay.
having a gig employee.
Okay. Anything that you see as a challenge?
I think the kind of culture or the kind of engagement, the kind of warmth, one could be a challenge. If second, there are people who would want to just connect professionally, would not really want to get into the main line or mainstream because they are just doing it as an additional or an add-on kind of a project. So I think that's one. And second is the formal structure, in terms of the performance appraisal, or as just some of the panelists mentioned, that how do you see the other processes or compliances in line? Those are yet to come up the curve. We are not matured as a market for those things.
Sure. Yeah, I believe Dhanashree mentioned that we still don't look at gig employees as a part of the workforce, really. And so I think we need to do some work around that.
I think the key lies in seeing, rather than looking at the tenure, look at their exposure. Rather than looking at the kind of intellect, we need to relook at the talent and the skill they bring.
Sure.
That's where the crux lies.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Sonal, how about you at VMart? What are you seeing as the differences that you're seeing between your full-time workers and the gig employees?
Seema, so gig working phenomena is now trending over the last few years, I believe, and now ideally occupies around 30 to 40% place in an organization structure. And mind you, it was not something that companies sought out as a strategy, and same went for us. It's only in the last 18 months or so when we started taking things into account. It is then that we discovered that's how we need to operate, because that's where the economy is heading. So HR leaders are now, including us, we are getting our arms around, lot many progressive technology platforms to develop and drive an agile workforce and integrate the gig workers with the FTE, the full-time employees. And if you talk about the culture part of it, as previously mentioned, so there are two things basically that we are looking for. So the first part is the ownership and collaboration. Although it has been into the DNA of an organization culture from last, lot many years now, but then now the only difference is that previously it was one of the HR agenda, that it was the HR who was running the show. Ownership should be there, collaboration should be there. But with the incorporation of these gig workers into the economy and in the companies, I think it's time for HR to sit back, and now it should be in the top of the company's strategic agenda as to how we should attract and retain the right kind of gig talent with us.
Okay. Cool. All right. So just a question for the rest of the group. So because we've talked about why it's important to have gig employees, what are the differences that you see? I'm just going to go around the group, possibly starting with Neelam. Neelam, can you talk about a couple of practices that you have used at Big Basket, which have helped you to see success in integrating your gig workforce with your existing workforce? Given that, it's such a young group, and normally gig employees are characterized by the fact that they come from paycheck to paycheck. What are some of the things that you've done from a skill development or a learning and development or a culture building point of view? There are two practices that people can actually walk away with, to help them integrate their workforces better.
Seema, if I think I think one is that I don't think I've ever introduced an employee or somebody in my team also saying that she's only here for 6 months.
Okay.
Or she's only working on, she's a contractual employee. I think Isha has joined us and Isha will work on the LMS content with us. So I think, and I don't think I or anybody at Big Basket, we do it intentionally or we've been told to do it. But even when I go into a classroom and I have 25 participants, I can't make out if he's on a contract or he's a full-time employee. So I think that helps you blend in because you're not looked down or looked up or wherever, however people want to look at you. I think that's one part of it. The second part of it is that though at times we know that these are, so we call them entrepreneur models, which means they can come and go whenever they want, kind of working. We've adjusted to their time of learning. So most of their L&D initiatives that happen with them, suppose they want to learn, is either that you learn or we do a workshop for you or something that because they have to come up a learning curve is online. So if you don't want to come, it's completely okay. But if you come, that'll be great because you'll come to know a lot of your, people that you have to work with. It is good. You can go out for a lunch or something. And that is something that has helped us have them settle down for a longer period of time. And I've realized once that initial inhibition of 1 or 2 months goes away, they're more welcome and they want to come to office to put a name to a face. So they want to say, who's Seema? Oh yeah, I've written so many mails to you, but can we talk about it and can I have coffee? So I think these two things really helped us.
So I'm hearing onboarding needs to be done in the same format.
Yes.
And you need to make sure that they have alternates for their L&D. They can't just be expected to come into class, but you're giving them an alternate method of learning as well.
And most of them will turn up. It's just some amount of learning
but
time.
You're giving them that learning that's specific to them.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Nandini, how about you? What are your thoughts on what can you do to make sure that these guys, that we're creating a more cohesive workforce?
So I'm going to answer this in 2 parts. So the first part is hiring of, I would say the short-term employees in the front end. So when we do that, we don't really differentiate because, the experience to the customer has to be the same across, irrespective of whether we're having someone short-term or full-time. So that remains the same. There's no difference in the induction or the orientation that we do for the rest. Coming to hiring of gig employees in the corporate office, normally we hire them to deliver on particular projects. So it becomes very difficult for us to really have a learning, program for them. But induction, yes, becomes very important. And these are very project-based, right? So it becomes very important for us to ensure that we align the team that's going to work with them, whether it's the immediate team or stakeholders. We need to align them that this is going to be a short-term project. And you will have to support the individual to ensure that the individual is able to deliver. So I think the entire orientation or induction that we do has to revolve around that. So that the person is able to be successful. There has to be a buddy or a mentor with that person so that wherever he or she is getting stuck, we are able to guide them. So I think that becomes very important. And anyways, we're hiring an expert to deliver on what the person has to deliver. So there's no question about, actually giving them a training intervention because, they'll already be totally tied delivering on what they have to, and they would be on multiple projects, right? So they may not be keen to spend that much time on a training program. So I look at it from these 2 perspectives that, at the corporate office, if it is for a specific time period, specific deliverables, then we just need to focus on ensuring the person is successful in that.
Sure. Thank you. Dhanashri, coming back to you, I think one of the, the questions would be that, and going from what Nandini also said, how would you use the gig employee to be able to impart the training that they come with? Because they come with specific experience. So rather than us training them, have you used them to impart training to your organization?
So not exactly them used for imparting training, but let me put it this way. I think we ourselves, if we are getting gig employees, we need clarity in what is it exactly that we expect. That has to be very, very sharp. That has to be very, very clear. Okay. There is the hand-holding time or the assimilation time has to be very, very fast. Okay. So I think more than them imparting training, it's like, this is a skill set that I'm getting on board. Right. And for that, I will support in whatever so that I utilize this skill to the fullest. Okay, so that clarity is very important, and it increases the minute these roles get senior. Okay, you have to be very clear of what you expect and that expertise. Unfortunately, I think at senior levels, I have someone who heads my entire learning and development right now. And if I have hired that person for the skill set, I mean, this is like an interim role because someone has gone on maternity leave. So someone is with me for 9 months. And with that 9 months, then I don't have time to impart functional skills. Sure. But all I can do is assimilate them into the culture as much as I can, give them the context experience, give them the sectoral experience, which can happen so that it's a win-win for both of us. Okay. And I think that clarity as a manager in a virtual setup is hard. It's tough. I mean, being a manager in a virtual setup is difficult. And in that, if it's, all of this, it makes it even tougher.
Sure. Cool. Isru, would you like to add to some of the stuff that IKEA has done in order to be able to integrate, the gig employees with their with the full-time employees?
Yeah, I think
specific practices that you can share.
Yeah, I think it goes back to also the last question that you asked: how have they been able to impart knowledge? I think when we talk about some of the freelancers that we bring in on a gig concept, they of course, like I said, come in with a lot of experience. We are very clear with them what the assignment expectations are and what they need to deliver in that given time frame. But what's interesting is actually what happens then in reality when they are obviously delivering in their role, and also how much sponge absorbing there is from the people that are in the business, because they see these as individuals who come with years of experience that can impart knowledge. So here we find that people are spending a lot of time with them, getting to know, getting to understand their assignment, getting to understand how they can improve their skills and their knowledge. So actually, it's a win-win situation for all. We get a freelancer that is there delivering the assignment that we require, and at the same time, without having the expectation, they're also imparting knowledge on our co-workers, which we need, of course, in order to be able to continue to grow.
Okay, thank you. Saurabh, in one of the previous companies that I worked, we had got a lot of frontline guys who came in as gig employees. And what we realized was, and they came in from these tech platforms and they came in from a lot of these support companies, right? But what we realized was they came with an attitude that kind of went directly against the full-time employees. And we saw some amount of acrimony between the two groups. Have you faced that in Shopper Stop or not really?
I think you're on mute, Saurabh.
Yeah, is it audible now?
Yes.
Am I audible now?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So just as I mentioned, I haven't seen a very stark challenge. Of course, every employee who joins, including whether it's a gig or a regular employee, they would take some time to come on board and to align themselves to the culture of the organization. But the biggest difference that I've seen is anyone who belongs to this gig workforce, the two things that they are actually working or they enjoy working as a gig employee is one, because they are getting the freedom, the space. They can choose their timings, they can choose their life. And second, they are also getting the kind of exposure to work for their passion. They're working for their passion and they're earning money. So if we use this particular stint with them, rather than exploiting them, maybe exploring their potential, one, they become a long-term prospect for us. Second, over a period, we have seen employees liking this particular culture. So all the best practices that the panel shared, assigning them a buddy, ensuring that they are, interacting with the stakeholder, making it absolutely clear. So that is all a part of transaction. But what you do beyond that, how do you make them feel that you're one of us rather than you're just here for a particular project? That goes a very, very long way. And so we've been focusing on their talent, their passion, and showing them that these are the possibilities if you want to join as a full-time employee at a later stage, and we can help you do that.
Okay. So just naturally making them feel that they can extend into the job if they want to.
Yes, because they bring in their passion, and I think that's what we want in them. The values and culture will come through the treatment that they see around.
Sure. Sonal, would you like to add to, a lot of the practices that the group has shared?
Yeah, definitely. And also, being an L&D person, I would also like to touch upon the previous questions that you asked about the facilitation that we do to ensure that the learning transfer is happening. So when we talk about gig workers with niche skills, so, they come with a very set of fresh thinking, since they have worked with different organizations and are very much exposed to disruptive thinking. So what we basically do is that we ensure that any kind of gig projects or assignments we are giving, we align our high potential full-time employees so that they are exposed to that kind of a learning environment and exposed to that kind of strategic and analytical thinking, creativity, innovation. These are some of the skills that we would want to build upon. And we need to ensure that, there are ample opportunities of learning transfer, knowledge transfer that we are giving to the entire team, so that the learning does not stop the moment the project is off, they walk off the door. So communication is something, and facilitation is something that we really believe that we do.
Sure.
Apart from this, yes, certain talent acquisition practices, because since we're talking about a different kind of gig talent that we are planning to rope in, we have to ensure that our presence is there on online job boards. We have with us a contingent talent pool that can be pulled up anytime we have any gig assignment with us. So the TA team really needs to be fast and furious to hire the right kind of gig talent. And not only the TA, but the talent management practices also we need to revamp. So the regular check-ins, not only for the full-time employees, but also for gig workers is a must. And instilling strong project management competencies with strong feedback mechanism should be in place if we want to integrate and develop strategic relationship with these gig employees.
Okay. All right. That's a great point. Right. So just, as a last question, and this is a tough one, right? And I'm just going to leave it open to the panel to answer as they feel right. How would you measure success or failure of a blended workforce? Have you guys been able to master anything at all that helps you to measure success or failure? Because, that's the question your CFO is going to ask. So while obviously at the start gate, it's always going to be a balancing of the one, getting your work done at the right time, right speed. And the second part is also obviously the amount of money that you pay out for a certain task, which may be required very specifically. Is there anything that you guys have learned over the period that can help our audience understand how to measure a blended workforce?
So Seema, if I may comment, and
sure.
I think with your experience in McDonald's itself, McDonald's is one company where, variable workforce has been, it's one of the companies in QSR where, almost 80-90% of the workforce is variable. Okay. And the minute that happens, that itself flows into your P&L in terms of your costs. Mix itself shifts into variable costs. And I don't think there is any other better explanation in being able to justify to the CFO. And in some ways, that's true of all of us. The minute it happens, a CFO is happier because it doesn't add to my fixed costs. Okay. The other thing is, of course, to make it work, a company like McDonald's had clear systems and processes in repeatable jobs in being able to do that. As the jobs get more complex, it gets a little bit more difficult. And that's where the truth lies in gig workforce. Because most often all of us don't have clarity. The systems are not well defined. Performance metrics are not clear. And in very practical terms, in hardcore HR, we want gig as cheaper employees. Okay. Yep. And unfortunately, that's not the case. We've still not moved into a skill or an experience mindset. okay, or an expertise mindset. Okay, the minute someone says it's a gig employee, the positioning we also have as HR professionals is, okay, break hai career mein, let me get at a cost cheaper. We still use very standard ways of, what was the last on salary? Therefore, okay, I can only give X increase, I can only give Y, or this is what, usko zarurat hai, and if this person will come on board. So a lot of that is also cultural. Second is P&L impact is very clear. But to make it a success, to utilize the benefit of it, a lot of it is cultural, specifically as jobs get more complex. I think retail is witness to, the more simpler, repeatable, it's easier. You will have a transition with the attrition at the ground level in terms of, so that movement keeps on happening. And unfortunately, that's where, gig is most often used. I'm more keen to look at, how can we utilize the benefits as we scale up the skills and look it across at a level, at a structural level. When we start looking at it, I think that's where the meat lies. Like a lot of global corporations have moved to, a skill set, and therefore what I need. And then there are no questions of how is it different experience. This is a skill, this is a person, and it's my job to make it, as smooth as possible. Just like you walk into a restaurant, you don't feel, oh, I'm a new customer. You feel at ease. It's just like that.
Yeah, so I think that's my question to the panel really, is how do you guys are, 6 really strong leaders within the L&D and the HR space. How are you going to create value for that blended workforce, whether it's cultural, whether it's financial? How do you measure it? Right. And that's always been the question when it comes down to anything that's people related. So, I hear you, but the question is are there any ideas on how we can do this? And I think it's more an ideation. We may not have been able to practice it yet, but how can we get CEOs, how can we get CFOs to start thinking differently about this?
So I would like to add.
Yes,
here.
Nandini.
So I think what becomes very important is first for HR to understand how the whole gig workforce works, and then make it a part, ask the CEO, take the CEO's help to make it a part of the organization strategy.
Okay.
So when we are doing our, manpower planning for the year, it becomes very important to have discussions with each of our stakeholders to understand from them what are those roles which do not require full-time employment.
Okay.
Right? Today, most organizations work on projects, right?
Okay.
And is it possible for us to pick those roles, probably, let's say in IT, probably in HR, in e-commerce, in maybe inventory, we don't, in audit maybe, right? So what are those, positions which could allow us to hire gig employees, make it part of our manpower planning and strategy, and put across, like Dhanashree said to the CFO or the CEO, that if these are the number of employees we are going to hire on part-time or gig model rather than hire them full-time, this is a saving we'll do. Against that, this is the benefit because we are going to hire experts, right?
Right.
The savings are, maybe we are not going to say, okay, we'll hire this person at a lower cost. But the fact is we're hiring them for a shorter period than a full-time employee.
Sure.
So for 1 year, we may be hiring them for 6 months. So we're still saving a 6 months cost.
So work the ROI model accordingly.
Exactly. So it has to become a part of the entire organization strategy. And like I said, HR needs to play a critical role in talking to people, making them understand the criticality of hiring gig employees and what's the benefit. And, you may end up getting better resources to deliver on a project than hire someone full-time. So I think this would really help make it part of the organization strategy. Yes.
Sure. Thank you. What about the rest of you
Can
guys?
I take, Saurabh here. I think the pitch of, just as Dhanashree mentioned, they come at a cheaper cost. That pitch itself is should be avoided because we are not looking out for a bonded labor. We are not looking out for people who come at a lesser cost. We are looking out for people who come with a higher talent, who are passionate about their work. And so just as Nandini also mentioned that when you look at the kind of output these people give in the
Mhm.
amount of time which otherwise a regular employee would take, naturally that's the biggest return. That's point number one. Point number two is, as all of us agree, that culture is very, very vital. So the sooner we give this feeling of connect to this employee, he or she is later on going to think about getting into the mainstream. I'll just give you an example. We have a employee working in the L&D itself. She joined for 3 months. But within the 3 months, the kind of exposure we gave, it was not just some kind of a MIS or a back office or an Excel sheet, but we actually involved her in delivering programs, in creating those programs, going out and doing the research, all of that. She herself wants to now extend, and she has done it twice. She is now going to go for further studies. Now, imagine the kind of connect we have left. I'm sure another year or two, this person is going to come back with a higher degree and with much more passion and intellect now, wanting to join Shopper Stop. And there are umpteen numbers of examples. So,
Sure.
what you do with that gig workforce during that limited time ensures a ROI for a very long term also.
Sure. Thank you.
Seema, I
Sonal,
have
Vishnu?
yeah, I was
Yes.
just going to also say, I think one area that that also needs to be that needs to be looked at is also the impact it has, like we've been talking about, on the culture and the values of the organization. Because of course, depending on the percentage of gig workers versus full-time workers, will have an impact ultimately
Sure.
In what kind of culture you build in the organization, the kind of values the individuals bring into it. So I think for most organizations, that is probably another question mark on top of the financial implications it has on bringing them in. And that probably is not something that we can measure straight away. That happens over time. So
Right.
what does that look like? Is that, do we see that in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, or in 50 years' time, if the organization is to exist for that long? So what kind of culture you want to maintain in the organization, the kind of values of the individuals you bring, is probably a measure that also needs to be quite closely observed over this time period.
Sure. So we have to create something that can help you measure that impact.
I think we need to, but at the same time, it's also understanding what is the length of that measurement, because you will never see a difference.
I mean, it has to be digital, it has to be actionable, I think, to my mind.
Completely, yeah.
Right. Sonal?
Yeah, so everyone has worded it so well. Just like to add, one of the points is that, most of these gig workers, since they come and work with us on a particular projects, so the success measure of the project in terms of whether it was completed on schedule, what was the quality to cost ratio, how much was the stakeholder satisfaction ratio, what has been the performance against the business case. So if we as an HR are able to measure those points and make a case study out of it and then sell it to the departments, to the CFO, to the CEO, I'm quite sure, we would be better able to integrate the gig workers into the present workforce.
Sure. Thank you. Neelam, would you like to add? I can't see her, so I don't know. Neelam, would you like to add to the group on how would you measure success of a blended workforce?
So to a large extent, Seema, it would be on what are they delivering. And as I would agree with what Saurabh said, that we're not hiring for cost. I would rather say that a person is bringing so much of value, and the speed at which things move are much faster than what I would have put a full-time employee, or maybe I would not have been able to afford or keep him engaged for years to come. But this person coming in would have added much more value to me and move the project much faster, give it more shape, than anybody else in the team would have been able to do that. So I think more than money, I would want to bring the expertise that this brings in. And especially, when we hire long-term or short-term coaches for our leadership performance. So we do, they come in for 6 months or 3 months or for 25 people journey or a 15 people journey. Now that expertise I don't have. Even if I'm paying a little more higher, the amount of investment that they do, the amount of leadership engagement that happens, the amount of sales performance that goes up is much, much far than the cost than, looking at it from a cost perspective. but
Sure.
more from a more engaging learning perspective.
Sure. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just summarize, I think, what we've spoken about for the last about 35 minutes, and then we can take some questions. So, some of the reasons why we've been able to kind of actually integrate gig employees is we need specific skills. There is a need for speed. Online platforms have made it easy to recruit, where earlier you couldn't. Our current, I think, younger generation has realized that they do want a work-life balance, and hence they don't want to be stuck with one job. They want multiple experiences. I think the big one was the trust piece that, that Neelam spoke about, which is really that we've started to also trust that people who do not work full-time can also still deliver, right? From a differences in terms of, what skills that gig employees versus full-timers, what I heard all of you say was that there isn't really a major challenge, however, which is current. We don't know over a period of time how that's going to play out. But the advantages is definitely, and I think Isu brought out a really great practice, which is ex-employees coming back to do gigs within the company. They understand culture, they understand how the organization runs, makes it really, simple and easy to run with. I think some of the other points were the speed of bringing on board is something that helps us to be able to make sure that we deliver the goals we've actually put out for. And I think a big point that came out of all of you was the delivery of the experience. They come with so much experience, it's easier for them to deliver what you require from them. And I think from a practices, I think the big one that I heard was onboarding. Actually, two really big things. One is onboarding, which is when you bring them into the organization, introducing them to the organization as employees, whether they're frontline or they're full-time or they're in the corporates, making sure the onboarding process is thorough. It may not be as long, but it has to be thorough. It has to explain to the organization why they're there and what they're going to do. The second big one is defining their roles and defining the scope of the assignment, along with what, key KPIs and hence how they'll be measured becomes a really critical one. I think Neelam brought up a really good point on making sure that the L&D initiatives are available the way that they need them to be available. Whether it's, in person, whether it's online, however that may work. I think it's also about assimilating the skills. I think there was another point on aligning them to hypos, which Sonal brought out, so that you can still keep those skills integrated, within your organization, even after they leave. Yeah, I think that was, and I think the other one point was your talent acquisition functions, also being able to think gig employee hiring, because a lot of them don't think like that. So I think that's also an important piece to bring in. In terms of measuring value, Dhanashree was very clear, saying P&L absolutely has to be able to measure it, but it shouldn't be based on the lowest cost. It should actually be based on efficient completion of project within a time and a space that you need to put it. Having output-based conversations with your organization. And I think Nandini brought up a great point on making it a part of manpower planning when you're doing strategic planning. So making it a part of the conversation within the senior leadership, so they start thinking about it differently. And, I think to Dhanashree's point, make it a part of culture, not from the cheapest possible employee, but really from a point of view of how do we get the work done, right? I think that pretty much captures most of the points that we've got on the page. With that, I think we can open up for questions. So I think there are quite a few questions. Meenakshi, can you help us with the questions?
Yeah, sure. Let me just read out the first one for you. It says gig workers for junior to mid-level. Does it also work for senior and leadership levels?
So yeah, I think, I mean, I can take that from what I got from the panel, and then maybe I'll request Nandini to take the question on further. I think what I heard from the group was that it definitely works across senior level positions. Dhanashree was very, very vocal about the fact that it's still not integrated as a part of acceptance at the levels that it should be. Right? People still think about it saying कि सस्ता काम में सस्ते में काम पड़ जाएगा तो ले लो. But I think it's about how do you make it, how do you make it more effective? And I think that's the whole strategic planning piece, integrating the conversations and seeding it with your leadership teams to make them understand what it means. That becomes really critical. Nandini, you want to just add to that?
Sure. So Seema, just to answer that question, the way I look at it is, it would work very brilliantly for, let's say, startups, like I was mentioning earlier too, right? They may not have the bandwidth to hire someone at a very high cost initially. So they may get someone at a, let's say a slightly lower cost, but they could have somebody who brings the expertise to build the base, build the foundation, someone at a very senior level who joins them, builds the foundation for them and hands it over to, mentors the person who is there and then hands it over to them. So I think it would work brilliantly for startups. Even in larger organizations at a certain, I won't say very, very senior, but definitely at, maybe a -1 level could work. Like we all mentioned, it's very project specific also at times. So if there is something just to be delivered for, let's say, a particular period, with some expertise required. For example, let me take an example of HR only. We want to put a compensation strategy together. We wouldn't want to, hire a consultant, an agency to do that. We might have an expertise in a gig worker, right? So get him or her on board and get the whole activity done. And we are done with that. So I'm just saying that it is possible. Like I said, it's very important to make it a part of the strategy of the organization and see what are the roles, what are some of the deliverables we are looking at, based on which we decide whether we want a full-time or a part-time employee, right? And where gig workers really, really work is, you're not investing in a full-time employee, right? When you hire someone full-time, you're kind of actually increasing the cost of the organization year on year. Whereas gig workers may come, deliver something and leave. So these are various things that we need to keep in mind and decide whether, irrespective of whether it's a senior role or a junior role, whether we need to hire a gig worker or not. But it definitely works, yes.
So the point that I'd also leave for the audience is, I think when you look at skills which are very specific or which are emerging, right? And digital becomes is one of those pain points, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are facing, because the skill that's required in terms of running digital is not keeping up with the pace at which digital is increasing. So specific things like that, you require exceedingly high skill. Those are great areas to hire gig employees. They come in, they fix a problem, they help the organization also kind of cope at a speed that's, appreciable. So yeah, no, I think you can hire gig at all levels. Anybody else wants to add to that, or should we move to the next question? Because I think there are quite a few questions, right, Meenakshi?
Yes.
So let's move to the next question.
All right. Okay. So the second one says, is L&D intervention for gig workers really worth the investment in terms of time and money, since their requirement is anyway temporary?
Okay, Saurabh's got his hand up, so he's going to answer that one. Go ahead, Saurabh.
I think, yes, having gone through this, I can certainly say it's worth every amount that we put, every penny that we put into it, because these are highly passionate workers. This is an area where your passion outlies your intellect and your skill. It can be covered, but your passion matters a lot. Also, looking at the kind of technology and the kind of radical changes that have happened because of the pandemic and technology, you'd rather have someone who is passionate and skilled and who knows the technology piece, rather than going out and looking out for an agency or looking out for someone who has that only digital expertise. Here's a person who has both the digital as well as the functional expertise. So it's worth having the investment in terms of the time and money. It's also not going to be temporary all the time. Maybe the nature of your project keeps on changing. So you can use the same expertise for different projects and in different functions also. You are also not bound to use this person only for L&D. Because this person is from L&D, he or she also understands the facets of the business and could show some promises in other functions also. So I think it is really worth the investment, not only in L&D, but any kind of function. Look at it as a talent rather than the background and all. I mean, we have had people who come from, let's say, a banking background or a chemical engineering background, and then now are doing amazingly well in fashion and design, because that's their underlying passion. So they are useful for both, for the design also, and plus whatever they have learned academically.
Sure. Thanks, Saurabh. Would anybody else like to add?
Yeah, I would like to add on the same. Thanks, Saurabh, for beautifully summing it up. Just wanted to add, and probably this would answer the next question also, as I'm able to see in the chat box. See, it is very important that when we talk about L&D interventions, it now, with the evolving workforce and also for gig workers, it never is that one size fit all. So when we are talking about designing an L&D intervention for gig workers, it is very important as to what are the competencies and skills we are training them on. So, and that would vary from the job or the project which they have been hired for. So something like, since for a gig worker, there are certain 4 or 5 skills which are of high importance. First being, they should be more collaborative in nature. They should have excellent people skills to handle different kind of internal customers. Their goal orientation should be high so that they can work unsupervised on clearly defined tasks. They should have excellent level of evolution and change management skills. So these are some of the things that probably if you train gig workers or gig talent force on, probably in the longer run, once they are through with the project and they want to continue the next project with the company, they'll come forward, and it would be kind of an employer branding for us as well. And it would help expedite the project for which they have been currently hired.
Sure. Thank you, Sonal. Meenakshi, should we go to the next question?
So while Sonal answered the question partly, so I'm just going to read out the third question, which says, what should be the basis for creating L&D strategy or vision if majority of workers are gig?
Okay, so Dhanashree, you want to take that question?
I'm going to say that I don't think it's any different than, what you would do otherwise. It's just that the span, your effectiveness of learning gets much, much sharper, crisper, and you would want this for any category of employees, isn't it? Okay, so therefore, how specific you are, and I remember that Alice in Wonderland thing, where do you want to go? So, and therefore, how does it matter which road do you take? So if you know, okay, what are the specific skill sets you want to impart, I think it's necessary to remove this mindset that, oh, this is a gig worker, I have to treat differently compared to any other worker, because more and more, it's necessary the minute it starts assimilating as part of our organization structure, ways of working, part of workforce, it's necessary whatever is faster. Imagine for the sake of name, any regular employee would also want faster turnaround, right? That is what will give you maximum bang for buck. Okay, that is what in the previous session we saw about ROI impact. So it's no different for any gig employee, as one would call it.
All right. Does anyone else want to add to this? Otherwise, I'll give you guys on a lighter note, right? And with all the years that I spent in McDonald's, one of the things that I always got asked is, with such high attrition, why do you spend so much money on training? And, on a lighter note, I used to always tell everyone, after 21 years, I've pretty much trained most of retail. So wherever I go, I get a discount. That's just on a lighter note. But I think the thing to remember is you're always going to continue to train for transferable skills. And L&D strategies are normally transferable skills linked. They're never specific functional skills linked. So when you're looking at whether your workforce is built with gig employees or it's built with full-time employees, you're really training them to do their jobs better, more effectively. So I don't really see that it'll really change how you look at it. All right. So I think that's the last question, right, Meenakshi?
Yes, just one last question, which says, how are L&D strategies getting changed due to changing nature of workforce?
Okay. So I think one of the points that Neelam brought out was the whole use of online and the ability to train faster at a time that they want to learn. So you no longer can train when you want to train, but you have to train when they're ready to learn, right? So that was one thing. Anybody else wants to add on any other things that they've seen that are strategies that are changing from the past?
Seema, actually, to add to what you were saying, also the attention span when it comes to training, as we know, is also shifting massively. So gone are the days when you could deliver a training that is 7-8 hours long. People are now looking for bite-sized trainings. So I think especially in a gig workforce, that becomes even more important, to try and get your message across from a training perspective in a very small time, in a very short period of time, so that you know that they have those transferable skills or the skills required to be able to perform their job. But I think this goes not just for a workforce that is connected to the gig environment, but just generally in how we are evolving as the sectors are changing, and how people are seeing the ability for people not to have that much of an attention span anymore.
Sure. All right. I think, and with that, we're actually almost at the end of our time, but I believe there's one more question, Meenakshi.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read that out. Gig workers are supposed to be trained and skilled, basically freelancers. Okay, why is then an organizational responsibility to train them, or rather skill them?
Okay, so I'm going to take that question, I think, and it goes back to what Isru said right at the end, right? Which is, when you have a workforce, it doesn't matter what their employment contract says, there is a culture and there is a way of working that you want to build within your organization. And I think learning and development is one of those functions that enables organizations to get consistency. So I don't think this is just about skilling at the hard-coded level. This is also about how do you impart what expectations you have as a business. So I think it's important to keep sight of why you're L&D, right? And don't lose sight of that part. It's not transactional. It is much deeper than transaction. You guys have to hold on to that, because that's what you're the heart of the organization. I had a boss who always told me, while operations delivers, training or learning and development is always they're the keeper of the keys. They're the ones that actually have the chabi. And it's important that you make sure that you constantly keep adding that value back to your workforce. With that, I think
Seema, can I just add one more thing to that?
Yeah. I think, Nandini, we're out of time, because I can see Hugo back, and
Sonal wants to add something.
Meenakshi is sending me messages, so I know that they're on.
Fine. I think Sonal wants to add something.
Meenakshi, is it okay? Can we go, Hugo, for 2 minutes? For
we could.
Sure.
Not a problem.
All right, go, guys.
So just wanted to add that you talked about organization. I wanted to talk about actually India's economy. So when they said, when the question asked that what is the need to train the gig workers, I just want to quote that there is a book known as Breakout Nations from Richard Sharma. And in that book, it is mentioned that if you want a nation to really break out, you have to attain $5,000 GDP per capita point. And that's really when the discretionary consumption kicks in and economy goes into a positive flywheel. And on the way to attain that GDP, our contingent workforce is immensely contributing. So as of now, if we talk, because, generally people are saying that, and they have that kind of an impression that for gig economy, it is basically for semi-skilled and moderate skilled workers. And the pay structure for them is really very, very low, somewhere around 10 to 15,000. And if we train them well and able to take them to a salary monthly, wherein they are able to draw a monthly salary of 30,000 rupees per month, then only we'll be able to achieve that kind of economy. So probably, from a holistic point of view, we are contributing to the economy if we are training the gig workers well. Thank you so much for the time.
Thanks.
Maybe, Seema, I'll just take 2 seconds, because this is, and keeping the time in mind, I'll make it quick. It's like if I'm getting an axe to be used, if I leave it sharpened, the next time I'm going to get the same axe, it will become easier for me to cut my wood. So therefore, it's very easy that we don't exploit people, but we explore their potential and leave them much more fruitful when they come back.
Sure. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I think it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Meenakshi. Thank you, Bhumika, for all the help. With that, I hand over back to Hugo.
Thank you very much, Seema, for that wonderfully engaging panel discussion. I'd like to thank our distinguished panel, Dhanashree Thakkar, Isuru Waduge, Nandini Mehta, Neelam Aluwalia, Saurabh Deshpande, Sonal Singh, and once again, our distinguished moderator, Seema Arora Nambiar. Thank you very much, each and every one of you. Okay, guys.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Seema, thank you so much for moderating this beautifully, and thanks to everyone for being a wonderful panel.
Thanks
to
much.
Rai.
Thank you, everyone. So much.
Okay, and for our delegates at the conference, we've got it's quiz time once again, but this time we'll start with the answers to the 3 questions we asked earlier and give out the winners' names. Name any 2 organizations which use the B-Sharp platform. I'm going to give you any 3 of these: Lenovo, Levi's, JJ, and there are many, many more. Question code 12, how many learners does Disperse cater to across India, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East? The answer is 750,000 plus. Our third question, code number 26, name the gifting partners and event partner at Retail L&D Summit 2022. The gifting partners are Shopper Stop and Soulflower, and you stand to get Soulflower vouchers if you got the correct answer. And the event partner is B-Sharp. Okay, winners, Alison Pereira of Godrej, Khurshid Sheikh of Reliance Retail, and Dipesh Ajmera of Ajmera Tires. So these are the 3 winners. Check your mailbox. We'll have the Soulflower gift vouchers mailed to you. Coming up right now, we've got a few questions that I'm going to ask in a rapid fire mode. You can please send in the answers in the chat box. Question code 3030. What do we call a short-term shop that keeps a physical space for a limited period of time? What do we call a short-term shop that keeps a physical space for a limited period of time? Next question, question code 22. Question code 22, what is the practice of selling merchandise at double the wholesale price called? What is this pricing policy called? It's called dash pricing. Okay. Question code 28. In the world of retail, what is the expanded form of RFID? In the world of retail, what is the expanded form of RFID? Question code 13. In 2019, which celebrity couple was named the first ever brand ambassador of the e-fashion portal Myntra? Which was the first ever celebrity couple named as the first ever brand ambassadors of the e-fashion portal Myntra? This was in 2019. Question code 17. Which Indian actress is the global brand ambassador of Adidas? Which Indian actress is the global brand ambassador of Adidas? That is question code 17. And the final question, question code 20. Name the Indian who was named Miss Universe 2021 recently, and after how many years has the Miss Universe title come back to India? This is question code 2020. Name the Indian who was recently crowned Miss Universe 2021, and after how many years has this title come back to India? Send your answers in right away in the chat box. We'll give you the answers immediately after we have our felicitation and the award presentations at the Retail L&D Awards. I'd like to begin by thanking our partners and associates, our platinum partner Reliance Retail Limited, our gold partner Disperse, e-learning partner Tesseract Learning Private Limited, event partner B-Sharp, gifting partner Soulflower and Shopper Stop, business networking partner REI Global Linker, charity partner Train, and magazine partner Storai. Okay, it's time to go with something that a lot of us have been eagerly looking forward to. That is the announcement and presentation of the awards at the Retail L&D Awards 2022. We received an overwhelming response in both categories, the Best Learning and Development Strategy, which is an organizational award, and the Learning Champ, which is an individual award. We'd like to begin by thanking our jury for the preliminary rounds. Thank you to Mr. Arun Vishwanath, Director, Talent Architects and founder of Trainers Forum. Thank you to Ms. Ophelia DeRose, HR Consultant, Mr. Subir Ghosh, Strategic Advisor, Porter, that's Resferber Labs Private Limited, and Mr. Lancelot Kutina, Senior Director, Human Resources, Flame University, Pune, and our grand jury that was there this morning for all the final presentations. Ophelia DeRose, HR Consultant, Lancelot Kutina, Senior Director, Human Resources, Flame University, Pune, Mr. BVM Rao, ex-head, HR, Shopper Stop Limited, Mr. R. Raj Narayanan, retired as Executive Vice President and CHRO, Titan Company Limited, and Dr. Lawrence Fernandez, Director, Learning and Membership at Membership Development at RAI. Thank you very much to every one of our jury for doing a very difficult task, I know, with so much grace and so charmingly well. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just announcing that our winners will be getting e-certificates and e-vouchers from Shopper Stop. Okay, it's time to announce the winners. We'll begin with the Best Learning and Development Strategy, which is the Organization Award, and we'll go in reverse order, 3, 2, 1. At second runner-up, we're going to check our screen. It's going to be the winner's name is going to be put on screen. At second runner-up, we have here it comes. Best Learning and Development Strategy, second runner-up, Marks and Spencer India Private Limited, Reliance India Private Limited. That is Kavita Lobo. Sorry, that is Smita Satyanarayan. Smita Satyanarayan, Marks and Spencer, Reliance India Private Limited, second runner-up, Best Learning and Development Strategy. Okay, let's go with our first runner-up. Our first runner-up, United Colors of Benetton. United Colors of Benetton, India. And I think the presentation was made by Ankita Sinha and Shruti Mishra. Congratulations. These are our first runners-up. And ladies and gentlemen, presenting the winner in the Best Learning and Development Strategy at the Retail L&D Awards 2022. And the winner is Infinity Retail Limited, Chroma. And the person who made the presentation didn't exactly sell our jury a Ferrari, but he definitely sold the jury his case, Robin Sharma. So congratulations to all our winners in the Best Learning and Development Strategy. Not to say that we have only 3 winners, because every one of our 5 finalists were winners. The jury had the very, very tough task of selecting the first among equals for all the 3 awards that they did. So let's now move on to the individual category, Learning Champ. Let's begin with our second runner-up. Our second runner-up, Learning Champ, is Mohan M. of Reliance Digital. Mohan, you were not feeling well this morning. I'm sure this news will cheer you up and speed up your recovery. So, Mohan, we congratulate you and wish you a speedy recovery. That is our second runner-up, Mohan M., Reliance Digital. Holding on for our first runner-up. Our first runner-up is Arpita Mishra, Skechers South Asia Private Limited. Arpita Mishra, our first runner-up, Learning Champ category. Congratulations, Arpita. And ladies and gentlemen, the Learning Champ at the 2022 Retail L&D Awards is Balaji, Reliance Retail, Fashion and Lifestyle, the man with passion. And I think that passion really showed in what he has done and how he presented it. Srinivas Balaji, congratulations. You are a learning champ. Congratulations also to your organization, Reliance Retail, Fashion and Lifestyle. Thank you once again to our jury. You've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you to every one of our participants and the organizations you work for, because it's an organization and an individual partnership and a team partnership that really makes this come alive. And on behalf of Team RAI, I'd like to say thank you very much once again to the jury, participants, and organizations. Okay, with that, we come to the end of the Retail L&D 2022 Awards. And I'd now like to request Mr. Lawrence Fernandez, Director, Retail Learning and Membership Development of RAI, to give the concluding remarks. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, so as we come to the end of the second Retail L&D Summit, I would like to thank on behalf of our team at RAI, the many who made this summit so very memorable. To the L&D core committee of RAI, my sincere thanks for their commitment and passion to make this second L&D Summit a landmark edition. To our galaxy of speakers, panelists, and moderators who have so willingly shared with us their vast experience and expertise. To all our partners for their support and association with our L&D Awards and Summit. My sincere thanks to the jury for the L&D Awards. A big thank you to all my colleagues at RAI, Meenakshi, Manaswi, Bhumika, Hardik, Mugdha, Deris, Samar, Shiv, Bindya, and others for their selfless teamwork through every aspect of this organization of this event. Thanks to you, Hugo, also. You have been the live wire hosting. And once again, it's a pleasure to have you at this L&D Summit also. And finally, last but not the least, to each of you for your enthusiasm in this event. It has been your energy and interactive spirit that has made this a memorable second Retail L&D Summit. We wish you all and your organizations all the very best in your endeavors. Till we meet again, thank you and God bless.